Hey guys, welcome to part 8 of What If Naruto Was Neglected Heir of Uzumaki clan. If you enjoy the video then like, share and subscribe as it inspires me to make more such videos. So let's get started. Chapter 22. Land of Demons. Since when do you know your way around the elemental nations? Kakashi asked as the two walked through the Land of Demons, heading towards the compound of the priestess. It hadn't taken them long to reach the country, but Kakashi still figured it would be by tomorrow evening when they would reach Konoha, unless Naruto decided to take another turn. Still, there was no time to rest with the redhead. During day, you always had something to do and night passed by quickly. It was not simple to be Uzumaki Naruto. Itachi was not like this. No, the Uchiha did have his moments, but he did not work like a slave. Perhaps it was because Naruto had so much to worry about. The Uchiha didn't have to worry about restoring the fortunes of his clan because his clan was in a good position, unlike the Uzumaki. Naruto still worked himself beyond what normal people did. Nevertheless, Naruto was not normal, was he? Are you left without things to say? Naruto asked the silver-haired Jonin beside him. You can have a mundane talk with me. I won't ignore you. I could use it now since I am going to face a dangerous woman. He didn't have to be tense when facing the priestess. There was a lot going on around him, so he didn't have to give anything away. He didn't really like people who acted like psychics after all. Still, this one was a different case, hence his decision to see her. Kakashi blinked at this before taking a thoughtful look on his face. Have you heard? There is a rumor in Konoha that there is a girl who got impregnated by you and your father offered to take care of her in return for her silence about it, the Jonin said, keeping his right eye trained on Naruto see his reaction. There was no physical reaction from Naruto. The redhead said in a thoughtful tone. Why would father do something like that? I don't know, Kakashi said with shrug of his shoulders. It could be that he wanted to protect you and the child. You have many enemies, and if someone were to hurt your blood, there would be many corpses that sensei would have to account for. Perhaps he took that into consideration. Ridiculous, Naruto said, but he ended up indulging the thought. Well, Tsunade did say that it was dangerous to someone like to deeply care for someone, because if something happens to that someone, there would be a lot of corpses as you say. The Uzumaki turned to Kakashi. Are you thinking of giving the idea to Drea so that he can write another book? But this one a little bit away from his infamous series. The thought of Drea quitting his line of work to write something with drama in it horrified Kakashi. How would life be without the precious? He was sure many people would be saddened by that reality. He wouldn't even be surprised if some lose their purpose to live. Of course not, Kakashi quickly said. It would be a good story to sell though. I imagine you'd have spies trying to enter the leaf and newsmakers going all the way to our village to find that woman. A possibility, Naruto said calmly. But I doubt spies would be able to get into the village, Kakashi said. With the barrier around the village and military police force active, it would be suicidal for anyone to try something like that. Military police power is limited, Naruto said. They do not have the power to enter all corners. Which I think is a bit unfair, but with shinobi and shinobi in all ranks, excluding Anbu, they do have a hand. The barrier around the village isn't made to keep out spies, it is meant to detect people not from the hidden leaf. Kakashi was not stupid, but he could read between the lines. So, if the Anbu and military police force don't notice it, the Uzumaki might not tell. Well, that depends on the level of danger. If they deem it dangerous enough, they will bother. Strange how things work, isn't? I have worked with military police force, they mostly depend on their intelligence to handle their business. I lead the Uzumaki, but I have not seen any Anbu before me requesting help with something. I'm a former Anbu captain, I know the Uzumaki who handle the barrier and keep flow of things are not the easiest to deal with. Well, that it depends on how you go about things. They usually just alert Anbu when it is a matter of village security, if not, they just keep records, and they don't share it with anyone. There was at one time that Anbu tried to look for the hole they bury all the information. The guys in command were certain that information wasn't being stored within your compound because it had nothing to do with you. That is something new, Naruto said. I really don't entertain anything that happens that side because it is not my job to worry about it. That is for the Hokage to think about. The redhead said. That is just like you, Kakashi said, with a smile, something that was slightly normal. He stopped when they reached the gates of the compound. You did make an appointment, right? A priestess is an important figure in such a country, that is why you see so many guards around here. Naruto relented on telling Kakashi that he already knew about that. Who was the one who had a reason for coming here? The redhead shook his head slightly. He was slightly becoming normal, and that was truly a cause for concern. He would deal with it when it does get back to Konoha. I did not make a thing, Naruto said. I merely wish to test things. If someone known as a priestess possessing mystifying powers cannot tell that she is going to have a guest today, then she is not worth the time, the Uzumaki clan head stated calmly. Well, that certainly sounded like Naruto. Halt, and state your names and business. A guard said to the two. They did not try to pick up a fight by refusing to follow the instructions. Naruto smiled, eyes closed. It was a small smile, but noticeable. He held up his hands as if to surrender. Uzumaki Naruto, this is Hotake Kakashi, we are both Konoha shinobi. The man appeared to think for a few moments. Someone behind spoke, staring at Naruto. The Uzumaki Naruto? The man asked, looking at the redhead in disbelief. Naruto nodded. The man stared for a long minute. You don't look anything like him, but physical appearances do match. You know them. This man is infamous amongst shinobi. Ilagakure has marked him as an S-rank shinobi, the second guard said. That other one is also famous. He is known as Copy Ninja Sharingan no Kakashi, a man who has copied over 1,000 jutsus. The first guard narrowed his eyes. What are such capable shinobi doing in this part of the land? You did not come here to try to get us involved in your wars, did you? Our wars? Naruto asked. Kakashi, did the previous war reach this part of the land? Have we even claimed ownership of any war? The Jonin shook his head. Wars only go as far as Amigakure, but that is because the country is between the land of fire and earth. This war hasn't been started by us. Well, when it does come to war, shinobi are not looked in good light because innocents usually get in the crossfire and other villages get destroyed during the wars. That is something we cannot run away from, the masked shinobi said. In any case, we didn't come here to start trouble, Naruto only came here to speak to the priestess. We first see if she is willing to speak to you, the first guard said, but before he could send someone to speak to the priestess about the guests, another guard came running up to the small group. What is it? Miroku-sama said they can come in. The third guard said. Kakashi and Naruto were directed into the compound. Naruto stopped when they started walking into the passages of the compound. If you want to explore the village, you can do so. If you want to take time to read as you rest, you can do so. However, don't go far. It will probably be too dangerous to travel during day, so we have to travel at night. I thought we were going to leave tomorrow morning. In normal circumstances we would, but remember the QB. It is bound to have caused some people to leave their houses in search for it by then. Traveling at night will be much safer, so you can get as much rest as you wish, but come night, we leave. We should rest in the morning when Konoha isn't far. Kakashi sighed. If Naruto was a slave owner, he would certainly be the worst owner ever. When Naruto arrived in a room that has had the atmosphere as his little room in the Uzumaki compound, he opened his eyes halfway as he stared at the beautiful woman sitting ahead of him. He smiled. Did he just admit that the woman was beautiful? Since when did he go around checking such things? The woman was with a child, a girl around Karin's age. The young one stared at him strangely and curiously. Naruto merely settled down as the guard left the room. This has become a bad habit of going into other people's houses unannounced and then apologize for it, the Uzumaki said to the silent woman. But I cannot avoid it. I must apologize for coming here like this. Miroku smiled at the redhead. You're not really sorry, are you? Naruto didn't deny it. Not really, but isn't it the proper thing to do? For formalities at least. It's only proper when you mean it. If you don't say it. Are you saying that you're saying sorry because it is sort of like an obligation? Naruto shook his head. Respect is something that is important when one heads into certain subjects with people. I don't do a lot of things because I mean then, I do most things it is right to do them. Perhaps that isn't what most would encourage since it goes against living according to what the heart tells you, but that is who I am. The redhead stopped there. I didn't come here for such a talk. He almost said trivial subject, but he held back. Miroku appeared amused as if she guessed what he had almost said. Is it my abilities that have brought you all the way from the hidden leaf? Are you afraid of death that you travel all the way just to know if I can tell you when and how you'll die? It was Naruto's turn to look amused. These hands of mine have shed a lot of blood. I have seen life disappear in many eyes. It no longer scares me. Death does not frighten me. Certainly, I am curious, but that isn't the reason I came here. What is then? There are certain people I'm choosing to ally with my clan. Overwhelming power isn't a requirement. You are familiar with Fuinjutsu and as you know, the Uzumaki are the greatest users of the art. I just need the image you have to be associated with my clan. Miroku appeared to think about it for a moment before asking. Why? I want to expand my clan's influence all over the land. The Uzumaki were once great, but the invasion in the Second War destroyed our home and killed many of us. I am now trying to rebuild, of course, things have to be different. I don't want to ruin the clan's image, I need positives to be around it, especially with the work that we will be doing. If you put it that way, wouldn't you agree with me if I say your past actions would not bode well with my image? I'm sure you're familiar with what I do here. Azumi did tell me that my image would put me in a tight position when trying to negotiate. My past actions aside, it is for you to judge whether you wish to be associated with the Uzumaki or not. I cannot force you, that has to be by choice because what I am trying to build is something that will last even after my death. The way you look now is certainly not the same as what my guards say about you. Miroku was willing to admit that much. But in my position, I have come to learn that appearances can be deceiving. In any case, I don't think you have any ulterior motives, but at this stage, I wouldn't consider it. Naruto could understand that. He didn't even blink when the woman said those words straight to his face, even when she knew he could force her to think otherwise. I have enemies and the shinobi world is at war. Konoha's enemies wouldn't hesitate to attack you just to spite Konoha. I understand that, but we can talk about things after the war. That is if you're still alive. Naruto managed a smile at those blunt words that were thrown at his face by a woman who could predict a person's death. Yes, that is if. When I do come around next time, I shall bring my sister. She is about your daughter's age. You must understand the burden you carry because of your powers and responsibilities. And you don't want your daughter to face all that. Naturally, that births the desire to see her live a normal life. I have the same desire. I do not wish for my younger sister to experience the horrors of the shinobi world. I want her to live a peaceful and innocent life. Your daughter can have a friend, who's from a prestigious family, a child of the Yondaime Hokage. I'm sure she'd find her as someone who is on her level. Miroku looked at her daughter for a second. How did Naruto come to know this? Perhaps he had done his homework, but if he was speaking from experience, then it was understandable. The following day. Konoha. Naruto is late, Drea said as he burst into Minato's office through the window. Well, it was kind of hopeless for me to think he would return on the day he said he would return. Minato looked at Drea for a moment before looking up into the ceiling. It was already noon, but Naruto was supposed to come back yesterday. At least that is what he had said. Minato thought the redhead would probably return later on today. He might get a little worried if the Uzumaki clan head doesn't come by end day tomorrow. There was no reason to worry though, was there? Naruto wasn't a genin that he had to worry about when he has left the borders of the Fire Country. He did believe that the redhead would be able to deal with Danzo. The man had his schemes and tricks, but Naruto could handle it. Minato put it on his son to rise above any challenge given to him. Worrying over it won't change anything, sensei, Minato finally said in a calm tone. By tomorrow, we should be getting reports of Iwa's movements though. If everything went according to plan. He did wish Naruto would bother sending a message on how things went with his mission. If it were Itachi, he would have sent a message if he knew he would return late and the mission held some importance. I doubt something went wrong, Jiraiya said. This is Naruto we are talking about. Either BA or S rank, your son has never failed his mission. We will just have to see how Uegakure and Kumagakure reacts to it. The Sannin paused. Who came up with the plan anyway? Naruto, Minato said. Both our enemies have been living under the impression that we don't have a Jinchuriki, might have thought they won't come across the Kyuubi in battle. That thought has been shattered now. Wouldn't it have made much more sense to just wait until the war really starts and hit them with a bang of surprise when they at least expect it? Jiraiya asked. If it was up to him, he would have done it that way, so he could have an ace in his hands. Yes, strategically that makes more sense, and if it were entirely up to me, I would have done it that way, Minato said. But Naruto was bent on crushing Danzo with the very Bajoa he wanted to get his hands on. I think he was a little mad with what happened to Izumi. Jiraiya didn't find it hard to believe. If he was mad, wouldn't it have been sensible he fight Danzo himself? Naruto doesn't do revenge. You know he has never held a grudge against Kumagakure for trying to kidnap his mother, or for the Hyuga incident. I think a part of him realizes that if he allowed himself to drift past that line, he might not return. He did say that killing Danzo wouldn't satisfy him even if he just chopped the man into pieces, skinned him alive, or slowly burned his insides from before ripping them out with his bare hands and crush his skull with his own hands, he would still not be satisfied. Jiraiya looked slightly disturbed by that. I see, he said. I fail to understand your son at times. You know there are bad shinobi. Sometimes I fail to see if he is good or bad. Well, he certainly has been trying to clean up recently, but that kind of history is one that will haunt him for the rest of his life. Haunt? Minato was bitterly amused by that statement. You are wrong, sensei. Naruto does not care. It will not haunt him. In any case, I need to assure the villagers about the Kyuubi before they start panicking. I'm sure they might go back to looking at the Uzumaki in a bad light. The Yondaime sighed at that thought. Nevertheless, Naruto had accounted for that. He had said it was okay if people badmouthed him. He was used to it already. Minato only hoped that it would not affect Karin negatively. Well, his daughter was a strong girl, she loved her brother and has never listened to anything people say about him. But this is something we cannot avoid, Jiraiya said strongly. Konoha needs all the power it can get. I'm positive the villagers will get over it as they did before. I hope so, Minato said. Has Tsunade settled in? She is still talking about leaving, Jiraiya said with a smile. But I doubt she will leave. You should allow her to take over the hospital to train the new children. I heard her saying that Shizune received a letter from Naruto requesting her services. From the way she said it, it appears as if she will take it. Minato assumed Naruto must have sent the letter because he didn't have the time to see her. This would allow him to apply the final touches when he does return to the village. I need Tsunade to teach medical ninjutsu to all who appear as if they can master it, and the basics to those who don't know. We are heading to war and every team group, army has to have a medical team to tend to the wounded. We cannot have people dying because there was no one to heal them. I will talk to her, Jiraiya said. Minato shook his head. I will. We need to start preparing our forces for war. Some of them have never fought, but we have to teach them what to expect in a war. The Yondaime Hokage frowned. No genins will be allowed to fight in the war, and even some chunins won't fight. Only those old enough will fight. Drea understood why Minato was frowning. This will reduce Konoha's forces, he said. But still, we possess many outstanding shinobi who can take on many at a time. That is what I am counting on, Minato said. I will also overuse Naruto massively. His mobility makes it easy for him to face an army without too many risks. Not to mention his possession of the Kyuubi. I have already prepared a teleportation jutsu that will allow him to be teleported into any battlefield his presence is required. Are you sure it will be wise to put such a burden on him? I don't know. I honestly don't know, sensei, but I know he won't break. Minato said the last words in confidence. Itachi will be another piece, so will you be. I'm working on teams that can supplement each other. I expect Iwa to cough out about 10 to 15,000 shinobi and the same for Kumagakure. That means we will be facing close to 30,000 shinobi. Not to mention 4 Jinchurikis. Drea added. There will be reserves on both villages. Minato nodded. But we can win, the Yondaime said. We can win this war. I believe we will win it. If we lose, it will be the end of Konoha. We also cannot forget about the Akatsuki. Somewhere in the Fire Country, a large blue man stopped both Naruto and Kakashi from their path to Konoha. Both were on guard because they could sense the power coming from the man. Kakashi knew about the missing nin from Kiri, and how he was infamously known as the Tailless Beast. He was wearing the Akatsuki cloak, which meant he belonged to the group. What was the Akatsuki doing here? They had so far traveled in peace without meeting any challenges. Kakashi didn't believe he had anything someone would want from him, but Naruto was something else. There was a lot occurring in the life of Uzumaki Naruto, and the bounty on his head tempted even those who claimed not to be obsessed with money. Kaizen grinned as he stared at the 2 Konoha shinobi in front of him. He was interested in the redhead, Uzumaki, who had a quite bloody reputation. Kaizen was interested in fighting such a person. It was certainly going to be a thrilling battle. Well, that is, the redhead doesn't run away. There was always the possibility, but he would not allow things to go that far. Uzumaki Naruto, Kaizen said, taking out Samehada. I have a mission to bring you back to my leader, because you are the way to the Kyuubi. I'm afraid if we allow the war start without getting our hands on you, it might prove tricky during the war. Naruto had his head tilted to the side as he went about his thoughts. Now he had discovered that the Akatsuki were after Bejois, or maybe just the Kyuubi. It was indeed true. Without him, or at least manipulating him, no one could get her hands on the Bejois. Manipulating him was beyond human ability. One would need to be a god to have such a hold over him. Still, fighting such a powerful would prove to be a risky business. He could escape if he wanted, but the man would still come after him when he was at least expecting it. At least here, there was Kakashi to watch over his back if things get dangerous. The man was still a powerful jonin and a user of the Sharingan. He would not be useless. Hoshige Kaizen, a Kiri missing nin, Kakashi said to the silent Naruto. He is one dangerous opponent. How do we go about this? His target is you, or at least what you can give him. It was safe to assume that the Akatsuki were after Bejois, not just the Kyuubi. Naruto was a dangerous person, and if the opportunity presented itself, any enemy wouldn't waste the time to try to kill him. But why did such a powerful organization want with Bejois? It couldn't be anything good given that they were S-rank criminals making up the group. There was a lot unknown, but this was a good start into knowing the objective of the organization. Eventually, they would be able to find out just what they are trying to accomplish. I know him, Naruto said in a calm tone. Kabuto did hold a lot of information about the Akatsuki since Orochimaru was a former member of the organization. Perhaps it is because of the snake's paranoia that he feels he must keep an eye on them. The redhead said. Well, expect Naruto to be calm in this kind of situation. Then, Kakashi asked, going back to his previous question. While he did not feel like it, this was a good chance to remove one member of the Akatsuki, and as far as his senses could tell, there was no other member or anyone else watching them. This was good for them. You keep watch. In case I'm losing, pull me out and we will retreat, Naruto said calmly. There was nothing wrong with running away when you could not win a fight. Pride only led to a pitiful death. Naruto would not allow such a small thing as pride lead to his death. His pride would be one that makes him continue to survive. Kaizen didn't allow the two to finish talking. He dashed toward the two with his sword gripped firmly on his right hand. Seeing the man coming, Naruto took several steps forward whilst Kakashi blurred away via Shunshin. The Jonin appeared on a tree, distance away, but close enough to be able to jump in should Naruto require his strength. The Akatsuki nin swung his sword blindingly towards Naruto's head despite its size. Naruto slid under the strike, getting in behind the nin. Despite it coming fast, he could react fast enough to dodge it and make a move as soon as he got behind the man. After sliding under his sword, Naruto twisted around, raising his left foot high with his right remaining on the ground to balance the rest of his body. Naruto's kick traveled through the air with speed and collided with Kaizen's back before he could twist around to defend himself. The kick sent the man sliding forward, but as soon as Kaizen was able to regain his momentum, he twisted around and sped toward Naruto once again. The man was able to reach Naruto within seconds, and as both his feet crushed the ground near Naruto, his sword came crashing from the air, heading straight towards Naruto's head. The redhead reacted instantly by sidestepping the attack. By the time the sword was crashing into the ground in a loud boom, Naruto had already danced his way behind Kaizen with some slick and fast foot movements. He jumped into the air before twisting around to gain a bit of power and momentum. When he flipped back to face Kaizen, his right foot was covered by intense flames. He aimed an attack straight at the back of Kaizen's head. Before the kick could land hit its target, Kaizen flicked his large sword behind him. Naruto's kick collided with the sword. Because of the power behind the kick, Kaizen was forced to slide forward a bit, but his sword absorbed the flames on Naruto's foot. The Akatsuki nin reacted quickly with a wide grin as he twirled, moving his sword with him with Naruto still just above him. He flicked it to his left hand before swinging it towards Naruto in a fast speed. The sword seemingly struck Naruto, but the redhead turned into a log, before it was crushed by the strike from Kaizen. Naruto appeared a good distance away from Kaizen. He stood still for a moment. Despite being big, the man did move fast and his reflexes were good. The sword was problematic as it could absorb ninjutsu, and that meant that he could not needlessly throw jutsu at the man, as it would be absorbed. "You're a fast one," Kaizen said as he faced Naruto. "Cautious too. You don't attack needlessly." "Well, that is what intel suggests," he then grinned, only finding this to be something that would spice things a bit. "This will make things fun a bit," he added. Naruto almost commented that the man was barbaric shinobi who merely enjoyed the thrill of a bloody battle, but he refrained from doing so. Since when has he ever fought with grace? The redhead didn't stay still as Kaizen charged at him once more. He also moved towards the Akatsuki nin. As in last time when Kaizen's sword was swung towards him, Naruto slid under it, but this time he did it on his knees, and just inches away from Kaizen. The Akatsuki nin expected Naruto to try the same trick, and quickly spun around, bringing his sword with him aimed to cut whatever that was being thrown at him. Kaizen did not find what he was looking for, however. He glanced down as Naruto's outstretched right hand grabbed his left foot, while the redhead was still in his sliding momentum. Kaizen didn't have the time to try to slam his sword down at the redhead, because as soon as Naruto got hold of his foot, he started to rise up as his movements were stopped by grabbing a still him. The redhead pulled his foot from the ground in a quick movement, causing Kaizen to lose his balance and begin to fall backwards. A Naruto clone appeared in a puff of smoke above the redhead. The clone quickly formed a Rasengan as he jumped above the falling Kaizen. The Akatsuki nin brought out his sword above him as he saw the Rasengan being charged towards his chest. The jutsu collided with his sword, but it was quickly absorbed. It didn't matter because Naruto was already behind the man. Both his hands grabbed Kaizen's face, with both his feet above the ground. Boom! That was the sound that hit the area as Kaizen was brutally slammed into the ground, head first by Naruto. The Uzumaki had put so much power in his hands that Kaizen's head dug deep into the ground, with one of his foot sticking out into the air. The clone that had attacked the man with the racing gan grabbed the man's foot before pulling him from the ground. The clone twisted around, spinning Kaizen into the air in blinding speed just to disorient him. After a few spins, the clone threw the nin towards the waiting Naruto. It didn't stop there, it also sped towards the Akatsuki man. Naruto twisted around, his right hand engulfed by flames. The redhead slammed a brutal punch at the back of Kaizen. It happened simultaneously with his clone, which slammed its flame-engulfed punch straight into Kaizen's chest. There was a burst of flames when both punches hit brutally. It shadowed a sickening crunch that followed as soon as the man was hit. The punches also burnt through the man's cloak back and forth. But the real damage appeared when Kaizen did not move, in which, because of the coordinated attacks, he coughed out a mouthful of blood as he hit the ground with both his feet. But before he could fall on his knees, Naruto, who was behind the man, held a single hand seal. Katan fired Dragon's Breath. The redhead mercilessly released a stream of intense flames from his mouth at point-blank range with Kaizen. The jutsu collided with the man, causing a small explosion as the clone dispersed, and Naruto created a distance in between. The flames suddenly died down as Kaizen swung his sword, which consumed the flames. He wasn't completely fine though. The man's cloak was burnt, blood dripping from his mouth. Kaizen spat out the blood and grinned. "You drew first blood." He tightened the grip on his sword. "Now it's my turn," he said before lunging at Naruto. The redhead clasped both his hands together. "Katan." He trailed off when he failed to need the required chakra because he had missed something. This was still enough for Kaizen to reach him quickly, slamming his sword towards his chest. Naruto put on a haste defense by crossing both his hands in front of him. It didn't do much as the giggling sword slammed into both his hands, before sending him flying like a bullet. He was sent flying towards a tree. Due to the monstrous power behind the attack, he was not able to recover his balance before he brutally slammed into a tree with his back. Even when the tree bended, nearly breaking because of his crash, Naruto did not even wince at the pain he felt. Between him and the tree, the one who experienced more pain was him, yet it was only the tree that made noise. Naruto looked up as Kaizen flashed right in front of him, his right foot charging fast towards his head. The redhead ducked under the powerful kick. Naruto breathed a sigh of relief that he had dodged the kick, as it had enough strength to finish off the tree. It would not have been good for his health if he had allowed such a kick to hit him when he was backed against a wall. He would have felt the full brunt of its force. Knowing that Naruto was behind him, Kaizen dropped his sword before turning around while doing hand seals. Suton Water Dragon. The Akatsuki nin released a huge dragon formed of water. The dragon marched its huge figure towards Naruto. Not so fast, but it was heading towards the redhead, who wasn't far away. Naruto jumped back while doing hand seals. He ended up being hit by the dragon head-on. The water jutsu slammed into his body before picking up into the air for a moment. It then slammed him down the ground in full force, causing a large crater in the ground. As if dispersed, the water filled the crater. Naruto's hardened eyes snapped up when Kaizen flashed above him, a punch slamming down on his chest. He did just enough to hold out both his hands together. The punch collided with his defense, resulting in a loud boom as it held back the punch, but he did feel its force as he was pressed down the ground. Kaizen went on the attack once again by slamming his sword down at Naruto. It was a hard hit that slammed the redhead further down the ground. As soon as he touched down the ground, Kaizen picked Naruto by his right foot before easily tossing him in the air as if he were a mere child. Suton Water Bullet. The former Kiri nin expelled a stream of water from his mouth. The water traveled in incredible speed before slamming into Naruto head-on. The redhead made no sound whatsoever as the jutsu hit him, increasing his speed backwards. Kaizen didn't let up on his jutsu. This robbed Naruto of the chance to regain his balance. Once again, he hit a tree with his back. The red was offered a chance to recover his breath when Kaizen didn't attack. Naruto stared at his left hand in a way Kaizen couldn't even tell. That reaction to the water reaction, it wasn't because he had forgotten. No, it had been purely on instinct. His body was trained to react in a certain way when he was facing a certain challenge. He had honed his instincts in this way, and now it was programmed. The battles he has fought, the training sessions he has done, they had forced his body to function in a given way. It was not simple as saying I can no longer use chakra with my left hand that his body would respond to it. It wasn't that simple. And it made Naruto frown. He had been truly ignoring to think about this. If he had given it much thought, he would have realized that it damaged his fighting style massively. With Kakashi, the Jonin frowned. Naruto was at a disadvantage in this fight. Kaizen wasn't known for his prowess in a kenjutsu battle. The man's attacks were mostly straightforward. He was just swinging his sword around. Naruto was good with a sword, but carrying his sword meant he could not use ninjutsu. The thing that made Naruto powerful wasn't his kenjutsu or taijutsu prowess, it was his excellence in ninjutsu. Even he who was famous for copying over 1,000 jutsus could not say he matched the redhead with ninjutsu. The Uzumaki was a ninjutsu specialist. For Naruto, wasn't just possessing hundreds of jutsus in his arsenal, it was how effectively he could use them, and the control over them was outstanding. Even Itachi has openly admitted that Naruto was better at ninjutsu than him, and understood jutsus better than he did. The redhead had total control over the fire element, not to mention water. He could use other elements, but those two were his best, and he could even combine them to create devastating jutsus. Certainly, if the redhead was playing at his favorite game, the whole forest would have been burnt to the ground by now. Back with Naruto. I'm a little frustrated and becoming ticked off by the second, Naruto said to himself, but Kaizen heard him. The Akatsuki member grinned. You're finally talking. I thought perhaps you didn't want to talk to me. The man said. A good battle cannot be enjoyable in silence. I was silent because there was nothing to say to you, Naruto responded calmly. There still is nothing to say. At this stage, I'm feeling slightly pissed off at my own ignorance. Unfortunately, I cannot punish myself, the redhead said, holding out his right hand. Flames began to gather around his palm. They created a dark crimson ball of flames. The ball was huge, hiding Naruto's form. Even when the redhead could not see Kaizen, he could still sense him. The blue man was surprised when Naruto slammed the jutsu into the ground. There should have been an explosion, but there was nothing. It was almost as if the ground had absorbed the jutsu. Kaizen stared down the ground, it was becoming hot. What had the redhead done? He gripped the excited Samehada firmly as he watched with interest. Naruto had released a large amount of chakra. It wasn't just the jutsu he released. There was something boiling underground. A sizable area covering the battlefield suddenly burst into flames, extremely hot flames. The ground was blowing out extreme steam. The air became extremely hot as Kaizen jumped back into the air. It was just seconds, but he was sweating already. Naruto didn't seem to have the same problems, as he was standing still from the ground. While still going up, Kaizen looked down the ground, it was burning, turning into lava. He grinned. Well, this was interesting. Given that the air was too thick, he could not use some water jutsus. He doubted even a water dragon could survive a couple of seconds in this environment. He could just escape from here to Avio minus. The man was cut off when Naruto suddenly appeared in front of him. If Kaizen was to be honest with himself, he was surprised, shocked even. He hadn't felt the redhead move, not sensed anything. He just appeared in front of him, right hand held high with a blade on it. Even so, Kaizen had reacted, purely on instinct. He hadn't seen the swing, but he had reacted. His instincts had reacted. Kaizen placed Samehada on his back before clasping both his hands together. Suton water explosion. The man shouted as he went down the ground, being pulled by gravity. Massive volumes of water burst forth, traveling around the entire battleground. The water was so much that it splashed across the face of Naruto's lava field within seconds and covered everything around, creating something like a sea. When Kaizen was able to land down, he looked around as he saw some water starting to boil, but because the water was too much, his jutsu and Naruto started canceling each other, creating a steam around the area. Naruto's jutsu died before his water could be finished, however. Kaizen placed a finger on his throat and wiped it. He brought it to his face. There was blood. He hadn't seen the swing, but his body had reacted. If it had not, the swing would have cut his head off his shoulders. It would have done it so cleanly and quickly, he would not have felt a thing. He was only feeling it now that he had been cut after all. That was just dangerous. Yet, Kaizen wasn't unnerved, scared, or anything so dramatic. He grinned madly. "This is more like it," he said loudly. "That swing would have killed me." But it was the battle-honed instinct that had saved him. His head would have been rolling down the ground with the rest of his body facing the other way. "I failed," Naruto said. "But still, I can get another opening." The redhead said. He wanted to use the existing water to create something of boil. But then he frowned. The sub-element was too complex and difficult to attempt with just one hand. If he tried it in that kind of fashion, it would be another suicide attempt. He had enough scars already. The redhead frowned. He created a special kind of clone that would be able to perform two-handed seals. The clone burst towards Kaizen while doing hand seals. Small orbs of fire formed around the clone before charging towards the blue man. Kaizen didn't wait for the jutsu to come to him, he dashed towards them, same hata in hand. He waved his sword straight at the jutsu. As same hata clashed with the jutsu, the clone flashed on his right-hand side, hands clasped together. Two chakra chains burst forth, grabbing the man's legs. Kaizen reacted instantly by waving his sword towards the clone, trying to hit whilst it could not move. With his hand outstretched, Naruto suddenly appeared in between. Kaizen had his eyes wide as Naruto's flaming sword was sent fast towards his outstretched hand. There was no difficulty as the sword cut through his hand, separating him from Samehata. Kaizen didn't even watch his hand fall down the ground along with Samehata with his feet freed because he had hit the clone. He moved them quickly before grabbing Naruto by the face. The hold was brutal, and he kneed the redhead on the gut before twisting around to slam a kick at Naruto. His foot did not reach the redhead, however. A chain was holding him firmly, but it didn't last too long before disappearing. It was enough for Naruto to make a distance nevertheless. Katan fire breath. Naruto waved the jutsu towards Kaizen just to get him away. The Akatsuki nin jumped back to avoid the jutsu. Naruto walked towards Kaizen's sword, but he did not touch it. He took the hand with his right before throwing it into the air. Before he could burn it to crisp, he sensed something and jumped away. A black swirl occurred just in the position he had been. Naruto's eyes fully opened as he stared at the figure that appeared. "Uzumaki Naruto," Obito said. "This is enough. I'm afraid I cannot let you do that," the man said as he grabbed Kaizen's hand. The man then disappeared. A second later, he appeared behind Kaizen. "I can still fight even without my hand," Kaizen said. "I don't doubt it, but you would not win, even if your opponent is handicapped. You can still fight another day," Obito said calmly. There was still a lot that Kaizen didn't show Naruto. Without another word, the two disappeared. Naruto wasn't staring at the place Kaizen had been but where his sword had been lying. An interesting creature had sneaked in to take it, but Naruto had seen it. It was surprising that the sword still allowed someone else to touch it. Perhaps it was because the thing was an ally and not human. "They appear to be gone," Kakashi said as he appeared just behind Naruto. Naruto did not respond. He walked away from Kakashi and faced a large number of trees. His sword disappeared, and a clone appeared. The clone helped him do hand seals. Katan majestic flame destroyer. Kakashi watched with a slightly wide eye as Naruto released an imperious jutsu that covered in insane ground. Within seconds, everything that was in front of him was covered in intense flames. The flames were running wild as if it was a wildfire. The flames burnt through everything they touched. Nothing remained alive after the flames dispersed. Naruto released a low growl as the ground he stood on shattered. No, it seemed to just turn into dust. Kakashi was now worried. "Naruto?" No response came. "Naruto?" Still there was no response. The Jonin was forced to walk towards Naruto, albeit cautiously. The Jonin held out his hand to try to get Naruto's attention by grabbing his shoulder. but his hand did not reach the redhead. No, his glove burst into flames, causing him to retreat it as he put out the fire. Kakashi did not try anything. For what seemed to be eternity, Naruto remained still motionless. Finally, he turned around, eyes closed, and spoke. "Sorry about that," he said in a monotone voice. "I was releasing some steam to calm myself. I'm a bit frustrated. But we should not stay here for far too long." Kakashi nodded. He could understand Naruto had almost killed himself trying to master his ninjutsu, but now he could not use it when he wanted. He had to think after all those hours for nothing. Anyone would be frustrated. "Don't you want to rest?" "I will rest in Konoha," Naruto said. He took out a small bottle from his pocket, and took out a tablet, before throwing it in his mouth. A small scroll was taken out, and the redhead opened it. He summoned the water sealed in it before opening his mouth to allow the water to help the pill he took to march down his throat. Kakashi did not say anything, even though it wasn't the first time he was seeing Naruto take pills. "You used quite a considerable amount of chakra, Naruto," Kakashi said in a firm tone. "We should rest, even for just an hour." Naruto was surprised at the firmness of his tone. He sighed. "But not here," he said. Kakashi gave the redhead an eye smile before taking the lead in moving away from the battlefield. It would be unsafe to in this location even though they were deep in the fire country. They were already behind Naruto's schedule after all, and with the appearance of the Akatsuki, nothing was now according to plan. They would have to move accordingly. Kakashi's pace wasn't fast, he was being considerate to Naruto, who was apparently tired despite not willing to show it. The redhead was lagging behind him. The Jonin kept his pace nevertheless, and they moved in silence for about 30 minutes. When he was sure they were far enough, he signaled for Naruto to stop. The redhead landed on the ground, and went on to sit under the shade of a tree, leaning against its trunk. Kakashi stayed on the tree. He made sure he was settled before taking out his book. He hadn't been fighting, so he was not that tired. A few moments of silence passed by. Naruto had his eyes closed, while Kakashi was looking at his precious book. The Jonin then looked below his book. Naruto was just sitting below him. "Could it be that you never gave this handicap of yours much of a thought?" He wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. Minato was his sensei, and they were close. The man was like a father to him. They shared things. Naruto was someone who didn't like dealing with troubling things. He chose to ignore them. "I won't deny that," Naruto responded in a quiet, monotone voice. "I have a tendency to shove troubling thoughts to the back of my head. Ignorance makes me live okay, but I guess in a situation like this it is nothing short of suicide. I'm a little disappointed that I have allowed it to get this far." Kakashi was silent for a few moments. Well, as long as the redhead was willing to talk, he would continue with the conversation. "Why didn't you think about it? Someone like you who has burnt himself trying to become powerful should have never disregarded the thought. This diminishes your output and puts you at a disadvantage." "Don't remind me," Naruto said strongly. "All the hours I spent learning and mastering ninjutsu will become useless. I gave myself eternal scars all over my body trying to learn ninjutsu. It is scary thinking that I might never use those jutsus again. Mind you, I have yet to even reach my prime. I'm nearing my 20s, it is such an age that I should be showing what I am made of, not losing what I have gained through blood and sweat. I guess if I had thought of what Danzo had done, what he had robbed me, I would have been massively angry. So much so I would have marched to his base of operations and burnt everything I could touch without considering the consequences." "I doubt there would have been much of consequences," Kakashi said. "After what Danzo did, you were within your rights to act against him." Naruto looked up at Kakashi, his eyes halfway opened. Their eyes met for a moment. "I'm not talking about those kind of consequences." "You mean you wouldn't know if you would be able to stop if you entered into a killing spree?" Kakashi said for Naruto. Naruto neither denied it nor admitted it. He just spoke. "It is simple for a shinobi to lose himself, Kakashi. I have seen too much. I have killed so many people. There have been many screams of terrified people that once filled my nightmares, threatening to break my sanity, but I made a decision not to care. Even so, if I allowed myself to get into revenge, won't the voice that keeps telling me that I am evil take over? Kakashi went silent. Minato had summarized something like this, but he had not talked to Naruto about it. All shinobi have killed, your father included. None of us are innocent, but I think it is the fact that we do not enjoy going on a killing spree that differentiates us from murderers. We do not kill simply because we want to, or because we want to see pain. We kill because there are things we need to protect. Perhaps it is wrong, but this is the shinobi world. Very often, it is kill or be killed. I forget that you fought in a war at young age, Kakashi, Naruto said. Konoha is not far away. Let us go, we will walk. But that means we will reach the village at night. That is fine by me, Kakashi said. The following morning. You only came back late last night and you're already at work, Azumi said as she walked over to Naruto, who was sitting behind a desk in his study, busy writing. You are going to worry people by fainting one of these days. That won't happen, Naruto said as he looked up at Azumi. His lips parted into a small smile. You look fine. By the time I returned, you were sound asleep, so I didn't want to wake you up. How considerate of you, Azumi said. She wouldn't have complained if he woke her up. Really, she would not have minded, and right now, she was bothered that he didn't wake her up. Don't be like that, Naruto said calmly. Azumi shook her head as she sat down. What are you working on? A report, Naruto said. I need to give this to the Hokage in a couple of minutes so that we can discuss a few things. War is upon us, there is no time to relax now. Well, both Kumo and Iwagakure will halt their movements for now because of recent events. By that he meant the QB. They would first have to check for the sightings of the Bajoa before they could make any move. They would not recklessly charge into battlefields, not knowing what to expect. He assumed that Konoha would be getting many visitors these days who would be interested in digging out information about the QB. Azumi was silent for a few moments before nodding. What took you so long to come back? Naruto looked up at Azumi with a raised eyebrow, the tone that she used that surprised him. Azumi had never used such a firm tone, it almost sounded as if she was demanding a response from him. Uzumaki didn't dwell on it, however. He returned to his writing as he responded. There was a disturbance on my way back, and I made a visit to the land of demons to see the priestess, he said. The land of demons? Azumi asked, surprised. That hasn't come in any of our conversations. What were you doing in that part of the elemental nations? She didn't know anything about this, even though she handled most clan matters because Naruto wasn't available full-time. I was still looking into it, and it never came up, Naruto said with a shrug. I wanted to get us an ally. I hope we will get her as an ally of the Uzumaki. Azumi nodded. She would learn more about it as the days go on. She was a lot of interested in hearing what this disturbance was that forced Naruto to come home late. What was the disturbance? A member of the Akatsuki showed up before me. Even though he said otherwise, I think he was merely just testing me, Naruto said calmly. Well, at least now we know what they want. That isn't something you have to concern yourself with though. What has been the reaction from the villagers with regards to the QB's appearance? Suspicion, Izumi said. Hardly surprising. I guess it was to be expected, Naruto said. Well, one may have to avoid the village streets for now. I was never fond of them since my reputation became ruined. Back then, in my days in military police force, I was truly loved. You ruined it, Izumi pointed out. Nobody ruined it. Naruto nodded. Yes, he said. The Uzumaki folded the scroll he was writing. I will talk to you after my meeting with the Hokage. Once I get through this, my day should be freed up, unless something comes. I shouldn't take long. Hokage office. Naruto nearly groaned when he found Jiraiya sitting by the window. He wanted to talk to his father and his father alone. The Sannin asked too many questions, and he didn't have time for it. He decided to ignore the man's presence as he sat down and handed the scroll he had to his father. Danzo is dead as well as his root forces. Well, the young ones are still alive. They should be retrieved soon from another location. On my way back to the village, I came across Hoshige Kaizen and engaged him in battle. Minato's first reaction at hearing that was to look at Naruto's left hand. How did it go? Frustrating, Naruto said, with a visible frown. This hand of mine proved to be a massive hindrance. But I managed to get lucky. He still lives, well, only because he was saved by the masked Uchiha who calls himself Madara. Minato turned serious. The masked Uchiha who extracted the QB from your mother. He didn't think that he would be hearing of the man's appearance so soon. It has been a long time since that incident occurred, but Minato had been choosing to forget about that man because he represented a danger that could not be underestimated. Naruto nodded. Does this mean he is associated with the Akatsuki? Naruto nodded. He was wearing the cloak, so yes, he is of the Akatsuki. Their purpose appears to be that of Bajois. From what Kaizen said, I assume they want the Bajois, not just the QB. Serious this is yes, but that isn't the thing that I found to be interesting. The redhead paused for a moment. You fought that man father, and you know Kakashi well enough, haven't noticed that there are similarities between the jutsu he uses and the jutsu Kakashi uses. Minato went silent for a long minute. I thought was just a coincidence, the Yondaime Hokage said. Naruto tilted his head to the side before responding. I'm not ruling out that either, but Kakashi possessed the Mangekyo Sharingan. True, there are certain abilities that users of those eyes gain, but Kakashi is unable to use any of those abilities aside from the basic ones of copying ninjutsu and genjutsu. This leads me to speculate that the ability might only be unique to those eyes. Of course, this is just speculation, but if we are to understand more about that ability, we need to study Kakashi's ability. Minato smiled. You decided that with just first glance. I know you're good with ninjutsu, but... Naruto interrupted, this is the Sharingan when it comes to it, I do not rest. Besides, that man is powerful, not our only problem. We still have the Rinnegan to deal with. Naruto paused. Well, that can come later on, he said as he stood up. Everything is detailed in that report. You are leaving already? Naruto raised both his hands as he yawned, stretching his muscles. I promised Azumi I would not take too long. He didn't finish speaking because he suddenly stopped as he fell backwards. The redhead hit the floor with a thud on his back. Chapter 23. Naruto's eyes snapped open, and he looked up. Just by staring at the white ceiling, he was aware that he was in the hospital, and the smell gave it all away within seconds. His senses alerted him that he wasn't alone, but there was someone else. The redhead turned his head and looked to his right. Tsunade was sitting on a chair and an expressionless mask on her face, and a chart on her right hand. You don't look too happy to see me, the slug princess said. I'm not happy that I am here, Naruto said. I would have felt much more secure if I was lying in my bed. Someone could just sneak in here and do nasty things to me. He said. I didn't expect you to be the first person I see when waking up. Situation forces me to be here, Tsunade said, but she didn't say that if she had not knocked out Azumi, the woman would have been sleeping right next to him when he woke up. Apparently. How long have I been out? This is your second day? We had you knocked out whilst I did my medical examination. Naruto's eyes sharpened at that. Don't look at me so dangerously like that. Your family was worried about you, and I had to do something, or Minato would not have stopped begging me. Really, it was just embarrassing seeing the Yondaime Hokage on his knees, crying that I look at your body thoroughly. Naruto was surprised at that, but he did not dwell on it. I'm guessing you have completed your examinations. If the look on your face is anything to go by, the redhead said. I have. Tsunade went silent for a few moments. After seeing the wounds on your body, I requested your medical history from your family, and I was really surprised to find out that you had once spilled out your guts. Well, this explains the nasty map on stomach and the burns on your hands. Azumi told me that you take medication for migraine, but after I checked you, there was nothing wrong with your head. I assume at first, you did have a problem. From what I was told, you overloaded your mind with too much information. What are you inferring, Tsunade? The last time you went for a psychological examination was just after you became genin. You've risen through the ranks without getting any examination. That is truly just suicidal. The woman said in a firm tone. I have recommended that you go for one every month, and if you take a hard mission, you must go for one. The woman as being firm. She sounded as if she would force him to go if he refused. Well, she was the medic and he was just a patient. Still, he didn't like being here. Naruto sighed as he made himself comfortable on the bed. I find it amusing that you're suggesting that my headaches are nothing more than mental. It makes it sound as if I have issues. Naruto paused. What was he saying? He did have issues that needed to be dealt with. What else? Your left hand, Tsunade started. Maybe I can do something about it, but it will require time and some extensive research. I don't know if I will be able to finish that work before the war reaches our gates. So, you might end up fighting the war like that. That would not be ideal. He had experienced it. Naruto wasn't going to risk going out to fight with a burst hand. Without the ability to control chakra, he could not enter a battlefield as confident as he had been in his previous battles. This was a massive problem that had to be fixed. There were no stories of legends if he was just going to die without achieving anything. He could just summon the QB and allow it to fight his battles, but that wasn't Uzumaki Naruto. He had to fight his battles or else that selfish side of him would never be satisfied. You don't need to research anything, Naruto said calmly. I have some valuable knowledge stored in my head that I can give you. It deals with using senju cells. I have the pieces you'd require for that experiment. I'm not saying it will give me any senju abilities, but it could heal my hand. Tsunade narrowed her eyes. How'd you figure I was going to do that kind of research? Naruto shrugged. The Sandaime Hokage once approved something like that in hopes of creating a shinobi who could be capable of using Hashirame's Makuton. When it ended up in failure, and he stopped, but Danzo and Orochimaru did not. Orochimaru actually succeeded. You don't have the same thoughts about me, but it should be enough to fix my hand. Am I wrong? No, Tsunade said with a shake of her head. I can use Yamato. But if you have everything, then it should be fine. I'm only considering it because Senju and Uzumaki are actually related. So there should be no problems. I despise the idea of having someone's cells in me, but at this point, I cannot afford to be picky. My hand needs to be fixed, Naruto said calmly. You have my thanks. I'm not doing it because I care or anything, I'm doing it because your father begged me. This is also a unique situation that I find to be interesting and it should help future cases, Tsunade said as she stood up. You're free to leave, but don't take those pills again. Or you can until you get professional help. Aren't you enjoying saying that a little too much? I'm not enjoying it, Tsunade said a bit firmly. Maybe I can sympathize. You may have had your reasons, but all your life you've been fighting for Konoha, and this is the result of that service. If you'd been sheltered, if the QB incident had not occurred, you would have been different. Yet, you would have still suffered from the fate of having to live with the expectations. I have experienced and seen too much in my life. I have also lost much, but you have not lost anything. It is just experiences you have accumulated, and for someone your age, it is something even I would salute. Most shinobi cannot even hope to achieve what you have achieved so far in your life. You live to struggle, you have serious problems, and yet, you have remained stable. Your bloody history might not do you justice, but the fact that you are even trying to change that means that I might have been wrong about you. Still, your mental problems are your own, you could have solved, have gone to someone to help, but you just chose to shove things at the back of your head. Naruto didn't offer a response to Tsunade, he just got up from the bed, and stretched himself a bit before following the woman out of the room. For a moment, I thought you were going to take the window. Since I doubt you'd want to walk through the streets looking like that, Tsunade said. I may be accused of many things, most of which is true by the way, but I have manners, Naruto responded flatly. I will get you what you need by the end of the day. Perhaps I might even supply you with something that might improve your medical ninjutsu. Tsunade narrowed her eyes. What was he suggesting? Was he saying that she was lacking something? Wasn't she the greatest kunoichi with regards to medical jutsu who was still alive? I'd rather not take that if it is coming from you, the slug princess said. Kabuto was something else. When it came to medical ninjutsu, you will understand once you see the knowledge I gathered from him that he was indeed a master just as you are. The redhead paused before saying his last words. Later then, princess. Hokage office. Tsunade slumped down to the chair in front of Minato's desk. She had not thought that she would end up getting so much work even though she planned on leaving. It was just a case to resolve after another case. And now there was a war coming, her help would be needed. Konoha obviously lacked someone with the expertise as hers with medical ninjutsu. Maybe she would leave after the war ends. Yes, it wouldn't be so bad if she did that, and the village would stop pestering her if she did this one service. The slug princess stared at Minato for a long minute before sighing. I will stay just until the war is over, the woman said. It would be bad for my conscience if I let people die. There would be many who would die because there was no one equipped to deal with their wounds. Her grandfather would surely be disappointed if she allowed something like that to happen. Even she had a conscience, and really, she still did love Konoha. This was her home after all. There might be some bad memories, but this was her beloved home. She could at least be here in the time of need. Minato smiled. I'm glad to hear that, he said happily. I'm sure the Sandaime will be happy as well. I didn't say I was staying for good, Tsunade emphasized the words in a firm tone. I know, Minato said. But there is hope that you might stay after the war. But let us not get to that. How did things go? He was most concerned about Naruto at the moment. Tsunade was here, and she would not be leaving the village. There was nothing to worry. Fine considering everything, Tsunade said. Unexpectedly, I managed to hold a conversation with him. Granted our past conversations, I didn't think a fruitful one would take place. I'm a little surprised that the person I was talking to a few minutes ago is actually the very person who dragged me to this village. Minato smiled. At least that spelled to him as his son getting along with the slug princess. Well, most people were often left surprised after holding conversations with his son. They do go to him with the image that was painted by many shinobi who feared his name. The reputation spoke much, but appearances were very deceiving. Some people have said so, Minato said. Even other clan heads are often left clueless on how to deal with him. It isn't because he is difficult to speak with, you just never know, and at times he can be silent. Naruto certainly doesn't paint himself as an intelligent person, but he certainly is. He is no genius like Itachi or me, but he is still an intelligent and knowledgeable person. Apparently, Tsunade said. Who will handle the psychological examination? He really needs it, and the person who will conduct it has to be objective. You cannot do it. There will always be that thought that Naruto is your son. I guess that is why you have never thought it necessary to have him take one. There are people at Anbu who can deal with it, Minato said. I just realized that it would be fruitless. If Naruto didn't want to talk, he would not talk. What I have come to understand is that Naruto is much more aware of himself than most people realize, so he could mask his emotions and make it seem as if he is perfectly fine. But since we now know that not everything is fine, we can get something done. You've always known that something was wrong, Tsunade said in a hardened tone. But in appearances, he can appear as a completely sane person with no darkness inside. You're his father, and I'm given the idea that you understand him much more than anyone does in this village. In any case, why is he willing to give me valuable medical research? Because to him it would be just useless. Naruto isn't a medic. Tsunade stared for a few moments before shaking her head. You owe me money for drinks. I need to get drunk before I get absorbed into whatever Naruto gives me. Once I begin to work, I will need to be sober to make sure I get the results I need. Minato raised an eyebrow in curiosity. Wouldn't it be better if you didn't drink at all? Tsunade didn't even give it a thought. She gave a firm shake of the head before saying no. Uzumaki compound. Azumi stared at Naruto's back for a long minute as she stood at the entrance of his room. He was just standing still, shirtless, head facing the ceiling. It was a rare moment. Naruto wasn't the one who came to a halt over things to think like that. His best ability was, after all, shoving things at the back of his head and pretend as if there was nothing wrong, even when things were glaring straight at him. That aside, Azumi could afford to smile over the fact that he was back home, no longer sleeping in that hospital bed where he had been unresponsive. It was a sad state to see him in. He wasn't the most active and lively person by Uzumaki standards, but when he wasn't there, you did take notice of it. It was a good thing that there hadn't been anything particularly wrong with him. Tsunade had said he had just been exhausted. He had been working too hard, and not giving himself time to rest. Yes, there was a lot to do, but he had been doing it as if there would be no other day to follow. It wasn't a good thing, but she hadn't been able to talk him out of it. Did she even try? Azumi felt disappointed in herself over that. She should have asserted herself upon the redhead. She had been guiding him and watching him over the years. He would have listened to her. While she was not willing to fully accept it, there were cases in which Naruto was willing to listen to her. You will fall if you keep standing there, Naruto suddenly said, bringing Azumi out of her thoughts. His tone was quiet, but a bit heavy. Azumi blinked before shaking her head. The tone of his voice set off alarms in her head. For the first time in many years, she could feel the emotion in his voice, not just that but the burden he carried as well. It wasn't the time to smile, but it made her happy just to know that he was still there with her. Wouldn't you catch me before I hit the floor? Azumi responded, walking over towards the redhead. She could sense the smile as he responded. Maybe, he said, still without bringing his face down. He kept staring at the ceiling as if his eyes were glued to it. For a moment Azumi thought of just walking over to the bed and sit on the edge, but Naruto seemed down. Was it right that she comfort him? She hadn't been that intimate with him, but it felt as if it was the right thing to do at this time. Naruto didn't have anyone to comfort him when he was down. Perhaps it was because previously, when emotions overwhelmed him, he would go the memorial stones with a bottle of sake. Natsu would hear about it and go over, a small chat, and Naruto would go to a happy place where he would find himself waking up in the morning with an unknown woman. Surely, if nothing changed, he would return to that kind of a thing again. She had to do something about it. Naruto had taken away his medicine for stress by trying to change his lifestyle in order to make a good image for himself and the clan. Keeping himself busy with work might have been a way for him to stop himself from thinking about his problems. Azumi didn't want Naruto to return to his old ways. She wanted him to be a different person. She liked him as he was, but it would pain her if he ended up returning to his old ways. The redhead stood behind her clan head. Her hands were hesitant to touch him. She had done it a couple of times, but this time, it felt different. Perhaps it was because of her lingering emotions that troubled her. Steeling herself, Azumi let in a silent breath before she moved closer to just inches away from him. Her hands found a way around him, wrapping around firmly, and her body pressed against his. Naruto didn't make any movement, nor did he say anything. About an hour later. For a moment, I worried that you might be facing more problems than just exhaustion, Itachi said to Naruto as he settled down beside Azumi at the top of the Hokage monument. Naruto had just arrived at the place. It was a cloudy, and there was a cool breeze that made it worth sitting over at the place to talk or just stay in silence. The redhead didn't look at the Uchiha as he responded. Everyone has a tendency to assume the worst when the unexpected happens. I didn't think that Kakashi's words would become a reality though, he added with a shake of his head. You should have thought that it would happen if you continued the way you were, Itachi said firmly. But I guess for some people words don't get through. It is much better for them to learn important lessons through their bodies and experience. Naruto nodded in agreement, but he didn't say anything. How are you though? Itachi asked, sounding concerned. Naruto turned to face the Uchiha with a raised eyebrow. It shouldn't surprise me that you are concerned, but it does. Perhaps because I never felt the need to connect to you to an emotional level despite being considered your friend. Well, I could never take Shizui's place. In any case, we have known each other for a long time. Words are not necessary for communication, but our actions and the crossing of the blade. Perhaps that is the reason I never felt like fighting you seriously, not just my fear of losing. If we truly crossed our blades, there was a chance you'd understand my true self. Maybe I feared that as it would leave me exposed. I've never actually allowed anyone to cross a certain border. The redhead paused for a moment before answering Itachi's question. I'm fine. Itachi nodded. You have always been my friend, the Uchiha said firmly. I have trusted you with my back in a battlefield, and even in this coming war, I will trust you. In the past, even though we fought together, you never trusted anyone with your back, but I hope that you will change. The last time I left my back exposed, my sensei jumped in to take a blow for me, which was really unnecessary, but in the end, he took the blow and died. I don't want anyone sacrificing themselves for me. If I could grow eyes in the back I would, Naruto said before sighing. But I do hope after the war, you and I will fight to really see who the best is. Itachi smiled. I would like that, he said. The smile disappeared within a second as he asked a serious question. I have never asked, but how has this problem of yours impaired your fighting capabilities? Naruto frowned visibly. I cannot control my chakra in the same level as I could. Naturally, that affects my ninjutsu in every way. I cannot use sub-elements and other jutsus that require the use of two-hand signs. My output has been greatly reduced. Honestly, it would be difficult for me to fight against someone who is a strategic fighter. If I'm facing against a brute force I can manage. Itachi was silent for a few moments before responding. I see, he said. I will talk to you soon. My father wishes to speak to you when you do have the time. The Uchiha said before disappearing from the monument. I thought perhaps that we would have some peaceful days before the battles wage on, Naruto said to Uzumi. But I was wrong. War is upon us. The Kyuubi's appearance has not given Konoha's enemies a moment of pause. In fact, it has given them renewed strength in their efforts to wage war. It appears that some unknown force is going after Uzu. Kumo has already mobilized, and they will be moving out of the Lightning Country soon. Uzumi frowned at the thought. A part of her had been thinking that just maybe they would not have to fight the war and Naruto would not have to shed more blood, but she was wrong. This was going to happen. Her Naruto was going to kill many more people, and much more than he has already killed. Who had more kills than him in his generation? They did not keep scores, but Uzumi was sure that if they did, he would be far ahead of his peers. For Naruto, it stood out the most because of his brutality. That was something that Uzumi could not hide or ignore. Naruto was brutal as one could be in battle. The way he dealt with his enemies was just no different from how corrupted shinobi killed their prey. Uzumi truly hoped that it would be different this time. But you just returned from some rest, Uzumi said. Shouldn't you ignore this talk of war for about a week or so? True, you were asleep for the last 2 days, but you have not rested enough. That isn't an option at this time, Naruto said in a firm tone. I have come to understand that I'm just a mere mortal, and regardless of how much I value myself, I'm still just a human. I have limits, and in my current state there is a lot that can go wrong for me. But this is something that I cannot run away from, and in some sense, it does make life interesting. I would have wished to be still for a bit, but I cannot afford to do so at this time. My project isn't something I can just watch go in a puff of smoke. I have spent so much energy and money into it to watch someone ruin it. After this coming battle, there will be more battles that could go on for weeks. Are you going to be okay, though? Uzumi asked in a worried tone. Your handicap doesn't allow you to fight at your full strength, and it will surely hold you back. If they learn of it, they will start exposing it. That would not be good, Naruto said with closed eyes. I hope Tsunade is able to finish her work soon, otherwise I will have much trouble trying to stay alive. Honestly, at this time, I'm not as confident as I was back then. You're making me worry, Naruto. Azumi said. You have always been confident, no matter what. You have always believed in your strength always. There has never been a shed of doubt. If you start doubting now, you will not survive the war, Naruto. Your sister speaks highly of you, don't disappoint her by doubting yourself. Naruto opened his left eye for a second as a small smile slipped into his mask. You no longer address me as Naruto-sama, he said calmly. What has changed? Nothing, Azumi was quick to say. Perhaps you have stopped being a master to someone much closer. Well, you have always been much closer to me, but I have always understood my place before you. I may have called myself your caretaker, but I was still your servant despite being originally made to be your wife. Naruto's eyes opened halfway. He did not respond to what Azumi had said, but stood up and held out his right hand. Come on, let us go have lunch. I have a meeting with other clan heads in about an hour, and after the meeting, I have to leave the village. Council chambers. Minato settled down on his chair with a heavy sigh before looking around the room. Everyone was present. Well, no one could afford to miss the meeting when they were about to go out for real this time. It was time to mobilize and leave this village so that they could fight. I won't take much of your time, Minato said in a hardened tone. Kumo and Iwagakure have started to mobilize. So have to move out as well. We cannot allow them to get into the fire country. If they do so, they have a chance of reaching our village. If they reach Konoha, protecting civilians against two major forces will prove to be difficult even for us, the Sandaime Hokage said. This is why we must fight with everything we have in order to stop them from reaching here. I know it will be difficult as we will have to stretch out our forces, but there is no other way. How did it go with gathering information on their Jinchuriki? Tsume asked as she turned to Naruto. Jinchurikis provide much firepower to be able to break through defenses, and given the numbers we are facing, we will not have the much time to be focused on the offensive. The 4 Jinchurikis of the villages were moved to secure locations. Penetrating the locations wasn't impossible, but it was too risky for us. But we will try to keep track of their movements. We have been keeping an eye on them. Anything is possible nevertheless, Naruto responded calmly. I will be the first to engage enemy forces, possibly by tomorrow evening. I might not return to the village thereafter. Each clan will decide who will lead the forces of their members, but that has to be incorporated in our overall strategy. We will move out tonight by midnight. I will lead the forces, but I expect both Shikaku and Fugaku to accompany me. The rest of you will remain in the village with a portion of our forces to stay in defense. Is it wise for you to leave the village? We are going to move into place Fugaku was holding as a command center when stationed outside for military police. I will remain at that place. But because of my mobility, I can move between places, Minato said calmly. It will be best for morale if I leave with everyone. I don't want to feel as if I'm sending people to fight while I remain in the comfort of my office. Minato said. It will be best if I leave now, Naruto said standing up. I will meet with you after I have completed my duties. A clone will be waiting in your office. Without even waiting for a response, the redhead disappeared. He is in a hurry, Inoichi commented. Uzu is under attack, Minato said. Considering what happened before, I doubt he'd want for it to happen again. Naruto does love his clan, and to have it go through something like that again would be unacceptable. Besides, if he allows something to happen, it could mean an end to his dreams. Is he going to be okay, though? Fugaku asked. A couple of hours ago, he was not conscious, and he is not in the best shape to give it his all. Minutes later. The clone of Naruto raised an eyebrow as Minato entered the office with the Sandaime Hokage. He wasn't expecting the old man to be here. He didn't like dealing with the scheming old fox after all. Even so, he was not going to say he wasn't going to talk because the old man was here. This was the last time he was going to talk to his father before he gets busy with the war. I thought I would get the chance to talk to the real you, Minato said as he settled down on his chair. Well, this doesn't make much of a difference despite the fact that you can make your clones to take a different side of your personality. The sitting Hokage said. They had no talks since Naruto awoke from his forced sleep. They did need to talk about things, but it could not be helped with their enemies acting now. If they just allowed them to attack, things would not end up being good for them. Nevertheless, Minato was still concerned that if it came to choosing between Uzu and Konoha, Naruto might end up prioritizing his project knowing that he could always return his clan to its ancestral home. The Yondaime really hoped it would not come to that. He was given hope by the fact that Naruto loved his sister dearly. He would not allow for Konoha to be attacked while she was within it. It would certainly put her life in danger, and would do him no justice to the whispers in the village streets. Karin might end up being known as the brother of a traitor, or a deserter. That would not be good for her young mind. It was already enough that she has faced some questions over the behavior of her brother. Well, Minato shook his head. He had allowed it to happen. He had not done anything to try to stop his son from living that kind of life. Circumstances forces us to move, Naruto said calmly. Azumi will give Tsunade the knowledge she requires. If she is really a medical genius, she will not take too long as everything will be provided for, she only needs to understand it. I hope once she does, she will be able to get something done quick. You're really putting your hopes in this, the Sandaime said. But are you considering the possibility that she might fail? We are all humans, there are some things that we just cannot do. Should she even succeed, you might not get the time for treatment, as you'd be busy with the war. I'm not trying to ruin the mood, but I'm just trying to say that you should keep your options open just in case. There is less chances of a failure, Naruto said. But if she does manages to succeed whilst I'm in the middle of a fight, I will leave it for her to treat me. The Sandaime blinked at that blunt response. He wasn't expecting Naruto say something like that with a straight face, leaving the battlefield in war. That was just ridiculous. What if he was protecting something important? Would he abandon that, and go to seek out Tsunade? Are you serious about that? Sandaime, get this straight. I value my life, and I will not do anything suicidal just for the sake of being hailed as having made a noble sacrifice that was not necessary in the first place, Naruto said in a firm tone. Are you saying that sacrificing yourself for your village is pointless? You're missing the point. For someone as smart as you can be somewhat ignorant at times, maybe a little irrational, Naruto said. Would you rather I continue fighting a battle I would eventually lose than conceding a single battle to get the treatment I need in order to win many more battles? I will not be a sacrificial tool that will be sent to die. I will survive this war. Minato smiled. These two have never really gotten along. It started when the Sandaime tried to assert his beliefs on Naruto. His son had not liked it. He does have a point, you know, the Yondaime said to his predecessor. The Sandaime was silent for a few moments before nodding. I do see it, he said. Maybe I'm just quick to pass judgment on you because of our past interactions and my perception of you. In any case, you have not addressed my concerns. I have a backup plan, Naruto said calmly. The problem is that it is too risky. It has the potential to poison my entire left arm, leaving a possibility of me being unable to use it after the war. I don't want to consider it, but if my survival depends on it, I won't have any other choice. He paused. Say what you want. I have to go to Karin. The Sandaime Hokage smiled when those words registered to his mind. It meant that his beloved sister was really someone he loved. Well, he had known that the most important person in Naruto's life was his beloved younger sister, and apparently, the feeling was mutual. Naruto didn't just love Karin, he was also loved possibly equally. When Naruto stared at him, the Sandaime waved his hands in a defensive manner. I'm not thinking about anything. He didn't say sinister or manipulative, but those were the words. I'm just happy to know that there is someone so dear to you. I think it is important that we all have precious people in our lives. It is when we have things to protect that we are able to stay grounded, but at the same time, it is when people have things to protect that they are open to manipulation. Somehow, hearing those words from you doesn't make me happy, Naruto said calmly. I understand, I have to come as an insincere person, the Sandaime was willing to admit that. But really, I do mean the best. So does everyone say, Naruto said with a wave of his right hand. People will do wrong pursuing right, or so they tell themselves. He shook his head. He didn't want to get into this kind of a conversation with the old man. Was there anything else, father? Minato nodded and took out the three-pronged kunai. Can you keep one? Just in case? You know, father, as much as I hated being in your shadow, I also despised the thought of having to think of you as my backup in case there is trouble. Even when you gave me the kunai, I kept it home, because I didn't want to think that I couldn't get out of trouble without your help, the redhead said. But things happened, and although over the past years my efforts to escape from your shadow have been extreme, I have always kept one of those with me because I know that there is only one person who will come to my rescue any time without even thinking of the consequences. Fugaku would first determine if it was a trap or not, and might not even decide to do it if it would bring him harm. I somehow understand that. But despite your position as this village's leader, you would jump into a trap for me, as you have always defended my name despite everything I have done. The redhead paused. We are heading into war. Although I like to believe that I will survive, you can never be too sure, and even if we do survive we won't and may not survive without any changes. We had our differences in the past, but you have always remained in my corner for that. You have my thanks, and really, even though I wholeheartedly despised being in your shadow, I could not have wished for any better, father. The following day. Where do you people get the power to do as you please? Naruto asked, standing before shinobi enemies. Is the thing of what is principally right and morally right no longer fundamental in the lives of today? The question itself had no value to him. Naruto was asking it because it was something that had come to mind. When he was still busy in military police force, the law was something that had to be followed, not just the law, but the universal standards of what was accepted as right and wrong. Every day in the streets, he was observing that as part of his duty to maintain law and order in the village. The experience had taught him much about people and how people had to react. Of course, he had thrown away all those principles. Well, maybe he had just chosen to shove them at the back of his head in favor of doing whatever came to mind instead of being guided by principles. In any case, he was here, trying to stop these people from advancing towards Uzu. The village had done nothing wrong, it had not threatened them, it was just his project in which he was trying to restore the fortunes of his clan, but someone felt as if it needed to be a casualty of war. It was just unacceptable, wasn't it? Should you be the one to say something like that? One of the men asked, presumably the leader. You're a despicable man who kills people in the coldest-hearted way possible. What you do in the battlefield is extreme and tasteless. I never claimed there was any taste in it. I don't even like blood much, redhead smiled with a shake of his head. People would never believe that. Even that dumbest and naive person would not. Uzumaki Naruto was known for shedding blood in every battlefield he graced. Let us just get down to business, shall we? Don't forget to keep your distance. It was the shout that came in as the enemies broke apart, staying in small groups while keeping the distance from him. It was a rather good strategy, and it was almost as if they knew, but this wasn't supposed to be something open. Who could have informed them? Orochimaru knew, but what would he have gained by doing something like that? Naruto shook his head. This wasn't the time to be asking himself about something like that. For now, he had to worry about the people before him. He had to remove them, or they would remove him. Wasn't the saying all too familiar? It was either kill or be killed. That was the reality for him. Some people use it as an excuse, for him, it was reality. Naruto shook his head once again. It was never kill or be killed. You could disable an opponent without killing them. Ending a life was just much easier than breaking both legs. Thinking of breaking legs, Naruto kind of missed it. Three shinobi bursts started to charge towards him, coming from different directions. They were coming in fast and quick. It was apparent that they were at least jonin. Naruto readied himself. This was still nothing compared to the training he did. He could still treat it as one of the training sessions he pulled with his father when he was not able to use chakra. What was the lesson again? He had to use his senses, not depending on chakra, but his speed and reflexes. If he focused on that alone, his father had said, it would be difficult for anyone to match him on a pure taijutsu battle. He had already noted he was faster than Itachi and the Uchiha could never hope to fight him equally without activating his Sharingan. The first came in low, aiming for both his legs with a sweeping kick that flashed through the ground. Naruto's response was to jump up to avoid being swapped from the ground. The other two attacked simultaneously, one flashed in front of him and the other just above him, both swung kicks towards him. Naruto raised his knee to block the kick coming in front of him and raised his right hand to block the kick slamming down towards his head. His knee collided with the foot of the man before he was slammed into the ground by the powerful second kick. The kick that collided with his hand was hard, way too hard to be flesh, and it was more than what he could take. The redhead was still able to land on both his feet. The moment he did so, Naruto reacted far quicker than any of the men could react. His aching right hand snaked around the foot that had crashed on it before he did a quick twist, sending the man away. He jumped back to avoid the kunai piercing through the side of his right shoulder. It had come from the trees, but he didn't give it much of attention, just dodging it was enough. Reitan. The first man who attacked him shouted as he released a hound of lightning wolves towards Naruto. The redhead jumped back to avoid the incoming attack, but it still followed him. Before he could take another movement, a mud wall suddenly burst from the ground behind him, blocking his path. Naruto looked ahead as the jutsu rushed quickly. He held a single hand sign before the jutsu jumped on him and exploded into bolts of lightning. The moment it did so, Naruto also exploded into crimson flames. While they were still wondering where he was, Naruto flashed behind one of his attackers. The moment he did so, however, another kunai was flung towards him. This was aimed towards his head and coming in from behind. Naruto did not flee, he cocked his head to the side while his right hand formed a small Rasengan. The moment the kunai whizzed past the side of his right ear, the Rasengan was slammed into the back of the man. Earth-Strike Mud Dragon. Naruto wasn't given the time to rest as the jutsu came in from above, rushing towards him with its mouth hung open. Looking up for a second, Naruto dispelled his Rasengan and jumped back. The moment he moved, the mud dragon crashed into the ground in a boom that caused debris to pick up. Before Naruto could land on the ground, two more enemies appeared on both his sides, holding hand sinks. Mud wall. The first one shouted as another all burst around him, completely surrounding him. The Uzumaki clan head looked up as he sensed something. It was another mud dragon heading toward him. He quickly held a single-hand seal Katan Fire Dragon's breath. The redhead released an intense stream of crimson flames from his mouth. The flames rushed up toward the jutsu coming down. They clashed in mid-air. Naruto had made the flames to be hot enough to melt any earth jutsu, and that is what happened. He wasn't allowed to celebrate, however. A man burst through from the underground. Naruto was still able to react quicker. He jumped up slightly while his right hand formed a Rasengan. The jutsu was formed within a second, and Naruto slammed the jutsu straight into the head of the man. He put so much power behind the attack that he crushed the man's skull, causing blood to splatter. Naruto didn't give it much of a thought. The walls were still surrounding him. But before he could think of escaping, a large rock came in rushing down into his cage. Adama Rasengan. Naruto shouted as he spun around, a bit in anger. He quickly came to face the jutsu before his big ball Rasengan collided with it, grinding it into small chunks of earth. Naruto quickly jumped up to get out of the wall. The moment he did so, he frowned when he noticed something. There were fewer enemies. I see while I am busy others will be moving ahead to attack Uzu, Naruto said. I thought if I come here, you would all stop and focus on me, but I was wrong. It is nothing personal, this is war, one of his enemies responded calmly. There is a chance that we might fail here, and if we fail, we have a chance to succeed in destroying Uzu. You cannot be in two places at once, but if you summon the QB to deal with the ones already ahead, it will be a benefit to us, the man explained further. Naruto was silent for a few moments as he pondered how things were going. This was truly war, and it was a problem if they were this insistent on going after Uzu. Obviously, he could not allow things to go that way. Uzu could not be touched anyone, they would have to walk over his dead body to get it done. The redhead summoned his sword, it quickly lit into crimson flames. He held out his left hand before cursing silently. The flames dispersed, but he did not mind it. Instead, he took several steps forward before running through the ground chasing after the other groups, leaving the two who were facing him behind. They followed flanking both his sides. It appears Intel was right. You cannot use your left hand as you would with your right. Though this only concerns chakra, the man running on his right said, I didn't think the Akatsuki would give us such valuable information for free. They must not really like you. Then again, most shinobi resent you. Was his fight with Kaizam just a ploy to see how he would fight? It could have been, and he should have avoided it. Water style, water bullet. Both men yelled, releasing streams of water straight at him. The jutsus came on both his left and right side, charging in quickly. Since using ninjutsu to defend himself was out of the question, Naruto responded by jumping into the air as the jutsus got closer. The moment he jumped up, the jutsus collided, exploding into a shower of cold water drops. While still in midair, Naruto narrowed his eyes behind. A third man had jumped ridiculously high and was now charging straight down at him in high speeds with a kunai at hand. As gravity started to pull him down, Naruto flipped to face the incoming man. He swung his sword in front of him to block the kunai that was flung like a sword. Because of the momentum, he was forced down to the ground at a faster rate than he should have. Naruto sensed a buildup of chakra. The man grinned before exploding into flames. Naruto jumped away from the flames with his hands folded across his face, blade still held firmly. The moment he landed on the ground, 4 walls burst up, and he found himself looking at a wall planted with explosive tags. If there was any time to curse, it was now. Boom! A loud explosion rocked through the terrain, blasting waves of intensive heat ushered by gusts of winds that picked up dust, causing the surrounding shinobi to shield themselves from getting blinded by the debris. The explosion became like a mushroom of slightly black flames. It kept burning for about a minute before everything calmed. Inside a large crater, Naruto was on both his knees, hands blocking his face, clothes burnt, but no fatal damage that could keep him down, his sword just beside his feet. The redhead looked up, before taking a deep breath, picked up his sword and stood up. There were no signs of life in his sharpened eyes. It was a close call, but one that he did not like going through very often or at all. His mood had taken a serious spin and the heat around him had increased to deadly proportions. I was okay with doing it clean this time, but I'm not too happy to give you that, Naruto spoke in a dead tone. There were small puffs of smoke around him, and nothing but blurs of red were visible as his clones disappeared. He had tracked the locations of other groups, and it was time to act. He turned his attention towards the men before him. He looked up for a moment before disappearing in a flash. His appearance was behind his target, the sword of his in the air on his right side. It took a moment, but the target fell in a thud, head rolling to the side. Earth Golem. A sizable mud creature was formed from the ground, and it quickly turned its attention towards him. A second later, it started running. Its movements caused the earth to tremble slightly. Naruto flicked his sword to his left as soon as the creature reached him. It swung its right hand in a slow movement towards his face. The redhead ducked under the punch while taking a step forward. A fire-style Rasengan was formed quickly and the jutsu was slammed hard into the creature's gut. Surprisingly, it only managed to create a hole within the creature's gut, but it still remained mobile. Naruto didn't remove his hand from the creature's gut. Majestic flames burst through the golem in all their intensity. It was for a couple of seconds, But the earth creature remained frozen before Naruto took a step back before it started crumbling. What the? One of the enemies murmured, looking at the atmosphere. It was changing. Ash? He asked, holding out his right hand. I'm given to understand that while I stand here, some people are making their way towards Uzu. I cannot allow that to happen, and fighting you people in this way will only waste time. When my clones disappeared, they had gone out to fill this area with ash. I figured the best way to deal with this would be just to set everything on fire. It ends things in an instant. You wouldn't. You'd be caught in the explosion as well. I'm not suicidal, Naruto simply said before snapping his fingers. A chain of explosions started rocking through the terrain. Flames burst through in an instant, hitting everything. This was followed by screams of burning shinobi as the flames swallowed the forest. Naruto stood still as the surrounding forest turned into a wildfire that was just violent. Later that day. Unknown location. The Yondaime Reikage was sitting with the Sandaime Sakikage going through their battle strategies. They were ready for war. Kuno's forces had already departed the Land of Clouds and were marching in different platoons heading towards the Fire Country. The main objective was to get to Konoha, but if they could win without reaching the village, it would be acceptable as well. Konoha would not simply give up though. Even if they do end up pushing the village's forces back to their village, they would not give up. For them, accepting defeat meant death. It wasn't like they were cold-hearted people who would kill them even if they waved the white flag. I just received a message, Onoki said to A. As expected, Naruto was the one who went up to engage those people, and we managed to confirm that the information we received from the Akatsuki is actually true. Though, the plan to get to Uzu did end up in failure, I still believe that we have gained something valuable. They now knew Naruto's weakness, and what was a weakness to Naruto had to be a weakness to Minato as well. They needed to plan for everything or else they would end up losing the war, even when the scales were favoring them highly. What about the QB? A asked. He wasn't concerned about the redhead himself, but the Bajoa he had in his possession. According to intel, the Uzumaki could summon the Bajoa, and that was a serious problem that they needed to deal with. He didn't summon it if that is what you're asking, Onoki responded calmly. Well, it is something that we have to face eventually. But we do not have to worry as we have our own Bajoas. We have managed to keep them safe and we can utilize them in the war to the best of their abilities. The objective is for them to strike when Konoha isn't expecting. You said you were planning something with your Jinchuriki? Onoki smiled. We know that Minato isn't in the hidden leaf. At this moment the village isn't defended at the moment, and if you manage to get past the barrier they have created around the outskirts of the village, you can attack them where it hurts. They are depending on their defensive shield to hold up our forces reaching close. How are you going to get past them though? The plan to create a military police force outside the village was to monitor the entire Fire Country to ensure that enemy forces do not venture deep. Onoki smiled. I said that we would keep the locations of our Jinchurikis a secret. Where do you think I had mine hide if they are not anywhere near the Earth Country? You mean that they are already in the Fire Country? Onoki nodded. They are moving towards Konoha. Trying to sneak into the village will be impossible. We know the village has a barrier that will detect enemies. So the moment they are in sight, with all Konoha's Fuinjutsu masters busy in the battlefield, they will move in. Of course, we will create a safe route just in case the unexpected happens, but either way, we will have the advantage as Konoha will have no choice but to abandon an ongoing battle to protect their village. That will give us a chance to move in. Realized, he managed to smile before adding. The past wars have surely taught you a lot, Sakikage. He said. But this leaves us with just one problem. I know, Onoki said. The Akatsuki, he said. But I have also been gathering information about their members, and since Orochimaru didn't like them, Kabuto was willing to divulge some information. It is a pity that was he killed, he usually had useful intel. Amigakure. I'd thought that we'd be the ones to instigate the war, Obito said to Nagato. But they are doing it for us, and this will make it much easier for us to collect Bejois. With everything that has happened, if we capture the Bejois now during the war, Konoha will not work with Kumo and Iwa because of their actions," the man finished. Nagato nodded in agreement. "I guess we must begin," he said. "Sasarai and Deidara are close by Suna. They will go after the One Tail. Since Suna isn't involving itself in the war, none of the other villages will make much noise about it. They will be busy with their war. Yes, they could strike now and end up winning this war, even though they were not the major player. They would invade this war that would only cause violence to them. The great villages have so far gotten away with everything that they have done, their wars that have destroyed the smaller villages while their villages remain secure. A time had come for them to learn a lesson. They would all end up on the losing side, and he would be much closer to peace. Yes, he could start dreaming now. Peace was much closer for them. Obito represented a problem because he believed the man had his own reasons. Nagato could sense it. He would have to day a minus. "There is a guest in the village," the man suddenly said as he walked over to the balcony to overlook the streets. "I didn't think that they would be attempting to get information even when they have bigger problems." "I will leave you to deal with it," Obito said without a moment of thought. He was gone a second later. Conan walked up to her friend before speaking. "Is it really wise to continue with him? He has shown on a few occasions that he is after something." "It is fine, Conan," Nagato said. "I control the Gedo Mazo and possess the Rinnegan. As long as I have these two things, he will always be around. The Rinnegan was the reason he even appeared before me. For now, let us deal with the enemy in our village. We cannot allow the great villages to do as they please. This land has seen too much." Late midnight. Minato raised an eyebrow as Naruto appeared at the command center looking beat up. It was obvious that he had just come from a battle. "Looks like things didn't go easy," the Yondaime Hokage said. Naruto shook his head. "Tactics are dangerous," and was nearly given third-degree burns. "But I managed to get out of it alive," the redhead said as he sat down. He looked at the full moon for a long minute before speaking again. "It ended late into the night. I did not rest there after it was done. I thought it was much safer to rest this side." Minato smiled. "You need to find yourself a stream of water, and get that foul stink off you before resting," the Hokage said. "I plan to," Naruto said. "I am still a clan head. I have appearances to worry about. Though, this is going to be difficult without Azumi close by. She usually chooses my clothing and does my hair. I don't think I have ever done it myself," the redhead finished in thought. "You really are lost without her," Minato said with a laugh. "Well, if you're a mess, we will have something to laugh about." "I'd rather not be the joke," Naruto said. "What are you still doing up, father?" "I was kind of worried about you," Minato said with an awkward smile. "You left with a message that was like a goodbye. Your hand really does worry me." "Well, Tsunade said we will deliver the goods in about a week as she no longer has to research anything because of the material you have given her. She just needs to test things to ensure that it is safe. I guess I will have to go back to Konoha soon then." Minato shook his head. "Tsunade is in camp with us. She has been working on a solution to your hand ever since she set up her things. I'm not the only person awake at this hour." Naruto turned to his father for a moment before closing his eyes. "Did you get on your knees again to get her to work around the clock to get things done quickly?" Minato just smiled in response. Chapter 24. It was going to be a little boring without Kabuto, or so he had thought. But this war was just going to make things interesting for him. It would represent him with the opportunity to take in some interesting pieces that would do well for his experiments and evolution. It was a little bother that Kabuto had been killed by someone who had managed to get what was inside his head. As far as his intel suggested, Naruto had been able to get inside Kabuto's head. It was a mystery to him how he had managed to get past the defenses he was sure no one would be able to bypass. The good thing was, it appeared that Naruto was keeping things to himself. He did know about the Uzumaki's secret operations, but what he liked about them was that they managed to keep things secret even from the Hokage. What was he going to do now? Orochimaru wondered. The war was occurring around the borders of his country. He could not simply avoid that. He could escape from the sound and find some place to hide just until the heat cools down, but the curious side of him would just kill him if he did that. Orochimaru, Setsu started as he appeared from the shadows within Orochimaru's lab. You have a nice place here. The snake Sannin didn't turn to face the speaking plant. He remained on his large throne-like chair as he responded. What does the Akatsuki spy want from me? Have you perhaps come for collection? He had left with their ring, and he knew they wanted it back. It was just never something that they put their efforts in trying to retrieve. He didn't like them, and they didn't like him. He had betrayed them after all. Well, that was part of the roller coaster called life. He hadn't planned on playing the role of an ignorant subordinate forever. He was just too big for that. It would be a good thing if you gave it back, Setsu said. We did not come here for that. We came here to ask if you were willing to come us again. Orochimaru laughed when he heard those words. Kukukukukukukukukukukukukuku. He laughed before pausing. Has the Akatsuki become so desperate? Not at all, Setsu said. We just think that it would be a waste if you got killed without making use of your abilities. Konoha wants you dead. They have seriously put the plan for your death this time around, and have put someone in place who can kill you. You have two options, either you join us or you die. Konoha will find you and you will be killed. But if you decide to join us again, you will not be killed. We will protect you. However, you will just have to do one little thing for us. I assume you want me to capture a Jinchuriki for you, Orochimaru said. I can't do that, especially when I know that your plans don't suit me. As for you offer, I will think about it. There is nothing to think about, Setsu was quick to say. Then no, you can go back to that fake Madara or Pain and tell them that Orochimaru refuses. We had anticipated that much, Setsu said, not sounding the least concerned. Well, actually we were here just to keep you company. We knew that you would refuse. Given your feelings towards us, it is natural that you would try the best you can disrupt our plans. We have to make plans to ensure that it doesn't happen, especially when you are so difficult to track down even for us. We will leave your fate for Konoha, but we will take something valuable to you, the crystal user, remains of the Kaguya, and the Sharingan you have in your possession. With Itachi. Itachi walked towards Naruto with an expressionless mask on his face. He was surprised to see the redhead early and active when they were preparing for battle, even in his condition. War was upon them, and the risk of death was present. Many would die and Naruto would be responsible for the deaths of that many. Itachi had seen war, and he was going to see it again. He truly hoped that this would be last one. He didn't want the younger generation to witness something so brutal and painful. War did no good to the land and the people. Only bloodthirsty shinobi who crave nothing but shedding blood would be pleased by war. In the field, they could slaughter as many as they want without anyone saying anything discriminatory. It was war, anything goes and anything happens. You solved your problem quickly, Itachi said as he sat down beside the redhead Uzumaki clan head. I thought it would take some time for you to deal with it as I heard it was a sizable number of shinobi heading towards Uzu. With his condition, there was no going explosive all at once to end battles. A fight that would normally take him seconds to conclude would now take him a minute. At least he wasn't being as cautious as he was before. He was taking a few risks in fights these days, and that got the enemy to engage as well. I just ended up burning an entire forest when it became apparent that I could not stop them all from reaching Uzu, Naruto responded in an indifferent tone. Itachi just stared for a long minute before shaking his head. Well, it was only Naruto who could say something like that with that kind of nonchalance. In that burning of the forest, Naruto had to have also burnt people, yet he thought nothing of it. Itachi doubted anyone would find fault in him for questioning Naruto's morals, lack of rather. He wasn't surprised by it though, this was just a classic Naruto move. The redhead was willing to resort to any means to ensure that he gets the win he needs if the option to retreat was not available. If he had the option to retreat, he would have. However, because retreating meant that he was going to allow those people to reach Uzu, that option was not one that could be taken by the Uzumaki. For a while, Itachi had wondered if Naruto was still the same selfish person he was back then because in the days of recent, there hasn't been any of that talk of me, it has always been about something else. Perhaps he had just been a little hopeful, a waste of thought. Naruto was the kind of person who didn't do anything that didn't benefit him in any way. His quest to restore the fortunes of the Uzumaki wasn't because he loved his clan that much, it was because if he did it, it would paint him as the clan head who returned the clan to its former glory. Of course, that didn't mean that he didn't love his clan. I understand why you and I have never really been able to connect, Itachi said, looking up into the sky with his blood-red eyes. His relationship with Naruto was different from the beautiful relationship he had with Shizui, the two could not be compared even though people do say he and Naruto were friends. There was no emotional attachment, no mutual understanding that made them strive towards the same goal, led by the same ideal. They were just two different people who should actually be enemies. The selfishness that Naruto displayed was the kind that went against everything he stood for, and yet he had entertained it for so long as he has known the redhead. There has never been any real effort in his part to try to change the Uzumaki. Maybe that was because he knew he could not win that kind of battle. Naruto looked at the Uchiha at the corner of his partially opened eyes as he responded, "Why?" There wasn't a hint of curiosity in his tone, it was just flat. "You and I are different people. The only common ground we have ever stood on was when it came to training, but even if we do talk about Konoha's protection, it was always for different reasons. For me, it has always been for my love for my village, but for you, it was something else." "I have never hidden my intentions from anyone," Naruto said, his cold blue eyes staring at the space ahead. "Well, perhaps that change in tone from you is also what has made things difficult with your father. It is really disappointing though, he did a lot of things for me for his reasons of course, but it doesn't change anything. It wasn't something that he really gave himself time to think over. There were always much more important things than feelings." Fugaku had been a great deal in his younger days, and the influence he had in his life wasn't something that he could just shrug away and pretend as if it hadn't been there. Maybe now that he has grown, he just didn't care as he did before. Growth hasn't really been kind. There are many things he has learned to let go, some because they no longer held any value and some because he did fear they would continue to influence him. He did like his independence. He didn't want to end up as the man who took a direction because he was led to it by someone else. This was his story to tell, and no one would help him write it. "My father," Itachi started strongly. "He really did think highly of you, but these days, he only appreciates what you can add to the battlefield. I don't think even if we were lacking in numbers, he would allow you back into military police force. You don't represent our values. Your father had thought getting you there would teach you how to work for other people. Well, admittedly, during those days, you worked tirelessly for other people. You helped many people help solve crime and other matters. Our code was your instinct. You were shining more than anyone was in the military police force, but the moment you stopped, you changed Naruto. You were no longer the Uzumaki who smiled with the villagers, the person who spread peace and security within the streets you patrolled." Naruto closed his eyes for a moment. He didn't open them fully after shutting off his thoughts. This kind of talk. When last did he have one of them? He has really avoided them in time, even with his father. Maybe this was the right time. Although he was confident in his power, and held no thought that he would end with the war, there was the possibility of something like that happening. This was war after all, anything was possible. There would be traps, cunning foes that he would face, and some battles would prove life-threatening. That was war. Power, Naruto held out his left hand. Many shinobi have taken the wrong path in the hunt of power. All my life I have been after power, for my reasons of course. Konoha's villagers could call me trash right in my face, but they could never deny the value I add to the village's military strength. I could say that everyone wants power for his or her own reasons. While it is true, it doesn't help with anything or paints what I have been doing in the good light. Even now, what comes first is the Uzumaki and then everything comes second. Without my power, I would have been discarded by many people already, but because of it and my willingness to fight, I have been around even though many people despise me or used to. You have somehow changed that narrative with being clan head. Itachi was willing to admit that. But that was just Naruto playing the part. If he hadn't realized that things wouldn't work well for the Uzumaki if he continued with how he was doing things, he might not have changed his ways. Ultimately, the general principle in the way he does things has not changed, it is only the circumstances that have changed, and maybe the mask that is being worn. I love my clan and would do anything for it, Naruto said. Well, not as much as he was willing to go the extra mile of his beloved sister. We suffered when oppressive people destroyed our home and we were forced to flee. We will not suffer again. As long as I am still alive, the Uzumaki will not suffer, they will remain strong. Yes, it is selfish, but I do not determine my worth by loving strangers when my own family suffers. You can go against your family to protect Konoha, I cannot do that. My loyalty is to those who raised me, my blood, because I know no matter what, they will never stab me in the back. Perhaps you can say this is all just to justify my selfishness, but I really don't care what anyone has to say. At the end of the day, we will all face death, and how we lived our lives will determine whether we die with regrets or not. Naruto went quiet for a few moments before changing the subject. They were in war. It was best to talk about the war itself rather than personal issues that would not save them in the battlefield. What has been our movement in the battlefields? Kumagakure's forces have made it past the borders of the land of hot water, and some of them are camped near the borders of the Sound Country. We have not heard anything about the Raikage, but I suspect that he is already with the Tsukikage. Iwa's forces are camped just outside our borders in Kusagakure. Naruto raised an eyebrow at hearing this. I thought Kusagakure was our ally. He said. They are, but things happen. I do believe that the Tsukikage threatened to attack then if they did not allow his men to pass through. The leader of the country would have had no choice but to agree, knowing that Konoha would not be able to protect him if Iwa chose to attack, Itachi said. Naruto was certain that they would not have tried to access the fire country through the rain. The leader of the Akatsuki would not have allowed them to do something so dangerous, especially when there was the possibility that the war would fall on their land. Considering what has happened in the past, he would have possibly destroyed them. Aside from that, there were too many unknown regarding the rain. Anyone attempting anything with the village would just be walking into a death trap. The Tsukikage was smart, he had avoided the village. Well, Naruto wouldn't have complained if they had tried their hand on the risky move. It would have made things much simpler for Konoha. What are the supreme leaders of Konoha's forces doing about this? Naruto asked. Kakashi has gone towards the Sound. However, to avoid things they want to first get rid of Orochimaru because he might try to complicate things. His location is currently unknown, but with things happening just outside of his door, there is no way that he will not try his hand in trying to influence the outcome of the war, Itachi said. It was apparent that they were going to be busy soon, or maybe even tomorrow. But Naruto wasn't looking towards something like that in his present state. He needed to be in his devilish best to be able to wreak havoc in the battlefield. The power that made even Fugaku cautious of him would need to be released at its best. For that to happen, he needed Tsunade to work her magic on his left hand. The woman said she would be done soon, and with the information he gave her, she should be able to work something out soon that would make him return to his deadly best when the hellish breath of his flames was licking the ground beneath him. Orochimaru could prove to be problematic, but he can be tamed, Naruto said in a thoughtful tone. So, Kakashi should engage soon. Iwa's supplies will obviously come through KUSA. Since it is just away from their home, they will be heavily guarded, but with enough firepower, one can strike their supplies. Naruto said, his mind already plotting ways he could get on about that. When he had a meeting yesterday to discuss further strategies, your father suggested that you might say something like that, Itachi said with a shake of his head. Well, I have always known that when it comes to battle, you think sharper, and explore many ways to win. In this war, we cannot afford to lose, we have to win, and I guess having someone like you will be helpful. The Uchiha managed a smile when he said that. Naruto didn't share the smile. But I'm not moving until my hand gets fixed. I'm afraid my secret is out, the redhead said calmly. If I got out now, they will be prepared to butcher me. I have caused many shinobi pain. I think if I get caught, I would be cut piece by piece as revenge. The Uzumaki shook his head at the thought. Naruto's reluctance to enter a war field without his full power was something that everyone had accounted for. They knew his nature, but luckily Tsunade said she would do the operation as soon as Naruto was ready. Itachi shook his head. I'm going to be camped by the borders of the land of hot water. For now, we just have to make sure that they don't get into the borders of the fire country. Of course, with the way we are spread, it means that it will be easy for them to infiltrate the country, for as our first act of defense we are planning this course of action, the Uchiha said before twisting around. Naruto watched Itachi walk away for a few couple of seconds before turning to another direction himself. He was going to see Tsunade. Before Naruto could reach the medic tent where Tsunade was stationed, he was stopped by the Nara clan head. The man had just appeared out of nowhere and had him stop. He made no effort to up his pace as the red-headed Uzumaki waited for him. Naruto didn't allow any emotion of impatience to show on his face. They were in war. There was no need to hurry. No one was guaranteed survival. Hurrying for war was just hurrying for death. When had he started thinking like this? Months ago, he hadn't thought that death could win a battle against him. He had thought he would never die without reaching his goal, but recent events have led him to realize that he was a mere mortal and not above death. He was a cripple now, and the challenges he has faced since then have given him something to think about. You have yet to see Tsunade, the Nara said as soon as he reached Naruto. He walked by the redhead's right in a slow pace. We need to get that hand of yours fixed so that you can move out. Naruto narrowed his eyes toward the man for a moment. It wasn't really a nice look, it was one that would make you uncomfortable if you noticed it. The words unspoken really mean a lot. Normally, I would simply ignore them, but my life is at stake in this war. I cannot ignore them. Shikaku smiled, waving his right hand in a surrendering manner. What we discussed with regards with how to use you in the war was your explosive style of fighting. Your father did mention that you know how to be silent and fight in a similar manner he does, but what we are counting on is your other abilities that you have burnt yourself trying to perfect. As you're now, you don't strike fear in the lives of enemy forces, but at your best you can. It would be foolish of us not to capitalize on your reputation. You will also realize that out of everyone in your rank, you're the only one who isn't in command. Some clan heads didn't want you to lead their men, and since the Uzumaki wasn't contributing anything to the battlefield, it was decided to just leave you be without an army to lead. You work best with a partner or on your own. For now, your focus will be on specific targets and Bajois. The Nara paused before asking. How far are you on that? I have located Ujido, but not the Eight Tails. It was Jinchuriki appear to have gone underground, but we are following a trail, and will find them soon, Naruto responded calmly. Our hands are stretched on the Jinchurikis and the Akatsuki, their threat cannot be ignored, and this is a good chance as any for them to strike, the Uzumaki said. I understand, Shikaku said. Once we have handled the threat of the Bajois, you will fight in the front lines with your father, that will be our endgame. We'd also like you to expand your reach to Orochimaru. Jiraiya said he was still in the sound, but not in Otagakure. I assume it would be too risky for him to just move about with all the enemy forces surrounding him. Knowing him, he would want to stay close to get his hands on the things he finds interesting enough to experiment on them. The war does give him more than enough humans for him to torment with his immorality. We need to have him removed from the picture. Naruto looked thoughtful for a few moments before responding. Once chakra circulates through my hand, I will move ahead to bombard all bases within Otagakure. I know most locations. It should draw his attention and most likely both Iwa and Kumo's forces that could prove costly, but if they appear I could just summon the Kyuubi to wipe them out with just a bang, the redhead said in a thoughtful tone. Iwa's supplies should be moving ahead as well. I could strike from the rear, and then disappear. But I don't teleport like my father. I would need something to zap me out once I'm discovered. Unfortunately, we don't have anything of that kind, Shikaku said. I will have to coordinate with my clones, Naruto said with a frown. Well, I have some plans for running away. Tactical retreat has always been on the agenda. Naruto has never been shy of it. If it would save his life, then it was a useful tactic that did nothing on his pride. Maybe he didn't have any pride. Most shinobi with his kind of power would never think of running away. Those kinds of people got killed while he lived to fight another day, so if it was a matter of pride, then this emotion could go to hell for all he cared. Shikaku was amused. It wasn't a lot of shinobi who could say that out loud. Well, Naruto was a special case. You're permitted to move out as soon as you're able to. But as you move, know that you're going to be needed there and there. Your mobility makes it easy for you to move into different battlefields. Kiri's forces should soon reach the shores of the Fire Country. You will be needed to welcome them. I will keep that in mind, Naruto said before taking a different direction from the Nara. It was like that, huh? He was moving because he was permitted. Since when did he allow people to boss him around like this? Well, he could allow this to slide. Being stubborn wasn't going to win them this war. He would give them the power to manage his movements for now at least, and so long as he wasn't being sent into a death trap. A few minutes later. I thought you'd be here the second you arrived, Tsunade said looking straight at Naruto. He had shown himself to be very displeased with his situation, and the fact that he was willing to give her priceless knowledge meant that he really did need her help. Well, this handicap had the potential to lead him to death. My father didn't make it sound as if you wanted to see him when I spoke to him last night. He only spoke of your presence here, but nothing about this, Naruto responded in a calm tone as he took a seat on the wooden table in front of Tsunade's small desk. Well, he wasn't complaining. Everyone seems to have gone out to battle, and if he had received treatment late last night, he might have been sent out already. At least this gave him enough time to think things over and get prepared mentally to face thousands of shinobi forces who want to murder him in the most brutal fashion possible. Ah, the pecs of being infamous. Well, that was the reputation he made for himself. He butchered shinobi left and right, bloodstains followed him in each battlefield he graced. It was no wonder why some people had to question if he really was on the side of good. The actions were no different from the bloodthirsty murderers who killed people for fun. For him it hadn't been for fun, but anyone can give compelling reasons to suggest otherwise. You don't have to sit, Tsunade said as she stood up. I have already made the preparations, and I was informed that you would not be moving until you were fixed. So, for the good of the strategy developed, I would rather we get this done quickly. Naruto just watched Tsunade move from behind her desk. She rounded it and walked past him, heading towards the exit. The redhead stood up and followed the woman. Why does it sound like everyone is ready to send him straight into the battlefield? Isn't that where you made your name? Tsunade asked. Claiming victory against large number of enemies has been your speciality. It might not the Konoha way, and something I honestly find to be repulsing, but your actions could affect the morale of enemy forces, and that could work well for us. Or it could motivate them to try all their best to kill me. Naruto pointed out another possibility that would not work well for him. It would certainly be dangerous for him to have that kind of heat in a war. Everyone would be out to get him. The whole world would be unsafe for him. Yes, but that is something you'll have to live with, Tsunade responded calmly. The two entered another tent. Shizune was already present with everything that was going to be needed for the operation to succeed. Take the bed and take off your cloak as well as your t-shirt, the slug princess instructed. Naruto did as instructed, but not in the same order. I'd thought of just replacing your hand with one filled with my grandfather's cells. But that would just be dangerous. Still, even what we are going to be will be dangerous, because if you're not strong enough, the cells will overpower you and possibly turn you into a tree. Well, considering that your DNA is similar to the Senju, there is no threat of your body rejecting the cells. I did some experiment with your cells to see how they'd react. If I transplant just enough, his cells can bond with yours. If I do it right, I can manage the balance. If not, you must maintain a certain level of chakra in you; if not, they will subjugate yours, and you will die. If things go per plan, we can avoid that. I can't say there won't be any risks. I haven't had the time to research everything. So, we will see what happens when you use it. My grandfather's cells are powerful, so you will inherit a portion of his chakra, healing abilities, and your hand might become unnatural. What do you mean, unnatural? The cells will be focused on the hand, so obviously, it won't remain as it is. It will likely just turn pale, but nothing disastrous. Tsunade said in a firm tone. If there are no more questions, we'd like to begin. Do I have to be conscious while you cut open my rotting hand? Yes. I will knock you after things have stabilized, so that your body can adjust to the invasion, Tsunade said. Konoha. Later that day, Minato was sitting with Izumi by their house. It wasn't often that he has one-on-one with the woman, but times like this called for this measures to be taken. Naruto played the man of the house inside the clan grounds. He was the Yondaime Hokage, but not Uzumaki. He had married to the clan, but leadership roles went to his son, hence he played the role of the man of the house. Everyone knew that their clan head had gone to war and anything was possible. The loss of Naruto would be massive to the clan; it would strike them harder than it did when the Sealing Corps were murdered. The clan head was a beacon that gave the clan members hope of the riches that were to come tomorrow. If he was not there to lead them towards that path, they would falter. Well, the Yondaime doubted some people would watch it all go to smoke. Naruto fought hard for his clan, and even though many would not like his personality, there was no one within the compound who did not respect him for both his power and his loyalty towards his clan. It wasn't a secret to them that Naruto put them first before Konoha, and they were aware of what he was trying to do in their former homeland. For someone who was willing to put them first, even despite being the son of the Hokage, it was something else. I got a message from Tsunade. She said Naruto's operation was successful, but Naruto is out for the next hours. He should be up by noon tomorrow. We will only get to see what he can do in the battlefield because she isn't even sure herself, but what is certain is that he will be back to his best, the Yondaime said. He was hoping for greater things in his son. They were still going to run rampant together later in the war. For now, he was standing as Konoha's last guard of defense. Things would be made much simpler when Kiri's forces advanced towards the Fire Country and stationed within the outskirts of the village to act as a defensive unit. That puts me at rest, Izumi said with a smile. Though I am concerned that this will just make him reckless. She said with a frown. Well, he does have a bit of arrogance in him. A bit? Izumi asked with a raised brow. That was just a massive understatement. The fact that he was willing to retreat when he could not win didn't mean that Naruto wasn't arrogant. No, he was someone who believed that he could not be defeated at his level best despite his reluctance to fight powerful shinobi. Well, he does make up for it by his awareness of his limits, Minato said. Izumi shook her head. Perhaps, but Naruto used to say that he would even come back from the dead if he died without fulfilling his dream. He used to wholeheartedly believe that he could not die without his dreams being made alive, the woman said. Well, when it comes to protecting his life, he goes to the extreme, and is most cautious. Minato nodded. He will be joining the battle once he is able to do so, the fourth started. This means that he won't be able to focus on Uzu. I think his project will not only be beneficial to the Uzumaki, but to Konoha as well. Naruto has set up everything to run its course during this war, but someone does need to keep an eye on things. I'd love to, but I can't afford to travel outside the village in times like this, Izumi said. Naruto would go on a rampage if something happens. I know, Minato said in a firm tone. I will make the occasional visit just to make sure that things are moving smoothly. I think Naruto has made plans, but it's not a loss to make sure. Just because we are fighting a war doesn't mean that we must not look ahead of it. Our lives cannot stop because of it, and having things to look forward to after the war gives us the extra motivation. If they didn't have the vision to look past the war, then things would be bleak. They were able to dream because they had the belief that they would succeed in making things happen, that they would win the war and continue to live prosperous lives even after the war. Many lives would be lost, that was a given, but just because people died didn't mean that they had to stop living. They had to give up on happiness. Minato didn't want to admit it, but death has become a part of the shinobi life. Losing someone was painful, but it has become a thing that most just wait for his or her turn to come. It happens regularly and in different ways. For this clan, there was too much to look forward after the war. Unlike other clans, they did not have to worry about losing family members because they only had Naruto fighting. However, should they lose that, it would be like a fatal blow to the chest. What did he say about it? Minato shook his head. We never got around the idea, but he will come back to the village soon. He has to be the one to accompany the Godai Mizukage into the village once she touches down in the fire country. No doubt they might face attacks, but he represents the best chance of her safety. We cannot risk anything happening to her. It would be disastrous and would certainly turn Kiri against them, even though he had liberated the village from Yagura with his 12-year-old son. Mei was loved in that village, and he had to ensure that she was alive even after the war. She wasn't going to participate, but just being an ally of Konoha could get her attacked by petty shinobi. Oh, Izumi mouthed as she thought about the older woman. There was something that she didn't like, but there was nothing she could do about it. She sighed before speaking again. Karin will be ecstatic, she said with a smile. Have you received anything from the priestess of the land of demons? Oh, I'd forgotten about that, Minato said with a sheepish smile. There has been a lot recently. I'd put it aside thinking I'd discuss it with you since you handle clan matters in Naruto's absence. I did receive a letter from her. She spoke about Naruto's visit, and the interest in seeing him again. Of course, once the war is over. She also wants to form a relationship with Konoha, if possible. Izumi tilted her head to the side. The woman was older, so she couldn't really look at Naruto in that manner, but then again, when in the mood, Naruto really didn't discriminate. Well, she didn't have to be worried about anything. He had told her about the importance of striking partners and friends for his business to be fruitful. Trade deals would be important for him, and if he didn't have the connections, he would not be able to sell what he was going to produce in Uzu. I did receive a letter, but it was directed to Naruto, so I didn't open it, Izumi said. Naruto would not have minded about if she had. She has already seen him naked. Letters from the priestess wouldn't hold much. Still, she felt it was the right thing to leave it for him. If I may, what did you want to talk about? Naruto, Minato started in a serious tone. I know that he will survive the war with Iwa and Kumo, but I am concerned about his state of mind. There has been a lot that Naruto has done, but he is going to do much more in this war. It will take its toll on him. I want you to be ready to help force your way into his mind if you have to. He needs to talk to someone who understands him, someone he can also understand. You don't have to ask me, Izumi said. But the fact that you're even asking means that you're very concerned. She paused. What is his mother saying about it? Minato shook his head. I would rather she not worry too much about it. She is already worried that her son is at war, and considering his reputation, many people will be out to get him. The flee on sight no longer applies in war. No one was going to run away because he had graced the battlefield. This was war. If they ran, it was their loss. He doubted that Tsukikage would permit something like that. The Raikage would be relying on his own speed to match up to him. That would be a slight problem, but nothing he couldn't handle. He was still the fastest man alive, even with the Raikage going at full speed. Onoki's camp. The Sandaime Sakikage was standing motionless under the gaze of the night lights. He was staring at the beautiful sight in the heavens that gave him a sense of peace, but he knew it was just a fleeting feeling. How could he be at peace when he was at war? If he was a mad old man who has gone senile because of the many years under the belt, then it was possible. While staring at the peace that was in the heavens, Onoki couldn't really see a real reason that had led him to this position. True, Konoha hadn't been doing anything to threaten his village's security. The only wrong it did was growing too powerful, frighteningly powerful. The Sandaime Hokage was still alive, and regardless of how old he was still a man who was feared in the battlefield, a man he could admit deserved to be called a god of shinobi. That was something that he didn't come close to even at his prime. But Konoha has had monsters walking out of its gates. Maybe it wouldn't have been so bad if lightning had struck the village, killing those damn Uchias and some powerful shinobi. There wouldn't have been a need for this war. They were here though. Reasons to justify the need for war didn't matter anymore. They were already at it, and they had to see it through. Wars have been started for smaller reasons. This was the shinobi world after all. A little thing could spark a clash between titans. If I didn't know any better, I'd say you were getting cold feet, Kuretsuchi said as she walked up behind her grandfather. She stopped by his side and stared into the heavens. This is beautiful. A pity the ground will be feeding on blood soon and the heavens will be breathing in the smell of burnt flesh and death, Onoki said mildly. Well, I truly hope that this is the last one. We cannot possibly add more to what we have so far. Comparing to the warring times, this is peace, Kuretsuchi said as if she has lived through that time. She has only read about it, and never experienced it herself. The people who lived in those days were dead. But what happened in the past could not be forgotten, it was their history. Admittedly, but I think those from that generation would have liked for the wars to stop. There is really nothing good about war, it is just pain and hatred to both the winners and losers, Onoki responded calmly. Says the old man who has started another war, Kuretsuchi retorted mildly. Onoki didn't offer a response to this, he opted to focus on the important matter. Konoha's forces have moved into position. For now, we will avoid the ones Jiraiya is leading. The weakest link in their line of defense is Kakashi. We will attack tomorrow, be ready. What about the Uchihas? Kuretsuchi asked in a serious tone. It would be a massive mistake on their part to simply just ignore them. They were dangerous people. She wasn't saying they were the most dangerous. If possible, they had to remove most of them from this world. Those cursed eyes of theirs were just dangerous for those who were not adept with genjutsu. We will deal with them. But the Raikage has suggested we utilize one or both of his Bijuas against the Uchihas. Our Bijuas have already moved into a good position to attack Konoha. Waiting for Kumo would be a risk I am not willing to take, Onoki responded. Well, two were still enough for attacking Konoha. They just had to make sure that they attacked at the right time, because if not, Konoha would surprise them. He didn't have to forget that Konoha still had the Kyuubi. But if Naruto was away from the hidden leaf, they could plunder the village, and maybe force Minato to admit defeat. If things don't go per plan, they could still use Kumo's Bijuas as backup, or plan B. Anything was possible in war, so it was best to leave some options in the open just in case something unexpected occurs. The Bijuas would be a good match against the Sharingan, but just in case, he would send someone with good abilities to fight. The good thing was that as far as he was concerned, the only person who could use the Susanna now was Itachi. There was doubt about whether Fugaku had it or not, but after that attack, it was confirmed. However, it was now a doubt if he could use it again. We have the numbers on our side, and the skilled shinobi to do it. Konoha's yellow flash will be left for the Raikage, Kuretsuchi said in a proud tone. She was confident that they would pull through. She was very confident. There wasn't a shed of doubt in her mind that they would win the war. Will you be able to handle his son though? Onoki asked. He would have to deal with the bigger fish of Jiraiya. The man had a wealth of experience in war and was still a cage-level shinobi. Someone with experience had to deal with him, and that was going to be him. He would not have the time to deal with Naruto. Kuretsuchi turned slightly tense at the thought of that man. She could not forget the day she came across him, the day he had made her fear him, the day he had butchered her men as if they were nothing but flies. She could still remember him walking slowly towards her, with red flames burning through the staked corpses of her men. There had been a lot of blood that day, but none of had touched him. It was as if he remained pure despite the bloodshed he had caused. Kuretsuchi could not forget him, and maybe she could not forgive him for what he did to her people. It had been monstrous. She pushed her thoughts at the back of her head and steeled her nerves. I will have to, he said in a hardened tone. Defeat wasn't an option for her. If I lose, my death is certain. That man doesn't take prisoners, he butchers everyone he considers an enemy. If I allow myself to be butchered by a man with no morals who will replace you as Tsukikage after the war. The following day. It wasn't often that Naruto allowed his excitement to show, but when he did it, it was something to see. He wasn't much excitement. He had just been woken up from his forced sleep by the slug princess, and he was feeling the effects of the operation the woman did on him the day before. He had never felt so alive since the younger days. His body has been exposed to so many beatings that have left it like an old cloth. He may have looked fine, but in the inside his body had been all banged up, coupled with the mental problems the slug princess accused him of having. He hadn't been all healthy. The vigorous training he had done had left its marks on his body, and he had come to realize that he would never be able to live a long life as other Uzumaki. It was different now. It was just a feeling he felt coursing through his entire body. It felt as if he had been restored to his best, and perhaps made even better. He wasn't all pleased with it, but he was nonetheless happy that he could feel his chakra coursing through his left hand. He was able to form two-handed seals once more. He was going to be able to execute the jutsus he had spent years and hours trying to perfect. The feeling was so great he just wanted to explode in excitement while releasing intense flames all around him. Your operation was a success, Tsunade said, staring at the back of Naruto. They were at a clearing, with Shizune right beside her. The redhead hadn't said a thing. He had just stood up and walked up here after she had woken him up. Naruto turned around to face the blonde student of the Sandaime Hokage with a smile. Yes, I can feel that. You have my thanks, and the Uzumaki's thanks, the redhead said in a light tone. He closed his eyes and held out his bandaged left hand before speaking again. Hashirama must have been really powerful. I thought that perhaps I could match up to him, but that appears to be impossible. He could feel the man's cells inside his body. He could feel them trying to subjugate his into submission. He wasn't going to lose that battle. He was Uzumaki Naruto after all. He would burn them inside his body if they attempted to take over him. It was very different from Danzo, because he could not just cut off his hand. Those cells were moving to other parts of his body, but were centered on his right hand. He was, Tsunade said. She realized that when the redhead spoke with his eyes closed, he sounded like a different person, and the atmosphere around him completely changed. Well, he was feeling different. And it wasn't because of her grandfather's chakra inside of him. No, there was something different about the person. When she started knowing him, he was someone who had a handicap. He had been a little subdued because of it. He certainly could not attract much attention with his disability. It was a problem no more. He was back to his old self, in terms of power at least. Do you feel anything off? Tsunade asked just to be sure. She wanted to explore more about her grandfather's cells. They could be used to different purposes other than just for empowering people. For Naruto, it was for healing purposes, but there was that part of it that she could not deny. Naruto's eyelids lifted up slightly before the redhead did some slow hand seals. He then clasped his hands together before chains burst through the ground like spikes. There were many of them facing the heavens with sharp edges. To be precise, one could not call them just chains. A few seconds later, Naruto snapped his fingers and the chain spikes burst into flames. The flames were only on the edges of the spikes, creating something like the flame torch. Even so, the small flames produced an intense heat that forced both Tsunade and Shizune to take steps backwards. Katon fire breath, Naruto muttered with a hand over his lips. He released a small stream of intense flames. The flames sped towards Tsunade and her attendant in a great speed. The slug princess reacted quickly by slamming the ground with one of her monstrous punches. As soon as he crushed the ground, a large chunk of wall burst up, just in time to collide with the incoming flames. The flames were not able to completely burn through the earth and ended up dying. There is nothing wrong. I feel very much alive. Haven't felt this way in a long time, Naruto suddenly said, standing behind both Tsunade and Shizune. The two quickly twisted around to face the redhead, but he had his back on them. Tsunade hadn't sensed anything. Well, at least she was able to confirm that he was fast. Thank you again, Tsunade. Maybe I will honor you with a drink after all these, the redhead said. For now, I have a snake to hunt down and then kill. Maybe afterwards I will go wreak havoc in the battlefields. After saying those words, Naruto disappeared in a burst of red flames. Maybe we should not have hurried to heal him, Tsunade said, staring at the spot Naruto had been standing a few seconds ago. It suddenly feels like I have just released a monster from its cage. That's it for this part. If you enjoyed it, then like, share and subscribe for the next video, as it's going to be more interesting, and also check out the other playlist. Hope you would like them too.